Now today we started off with a bang already. We got some news.
We got a big bomb right there.
Mr. Obi Toppin has re-signed with the Indiana Pacers on a 4-year, $60 million year, getting paid $15 million annually. How do we feel about that move?
It's a whatever move to me. I think that Obi Toppin played some good basketball in the postseason with the Pacers, obviously being just an energetic guy, athletic guy, being able to shoot the basketball, space the floor a little bit too. They did want to keep their role players, and keeping Obi Toppin around, especially for $15 million a season, is not going to hurt them, not even a little bit. I think that that's a very solid contract for a player his caliber.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Obi's someone who they traded for last offseason, so don't want to let him walk for nothing. $15 million a year in today's market, especially a year or two down the line, that's going to look like a great deal. And then you also got to think the other side. If the Pacers do want to go out and trade for a star a year or two, that's going to be a salary that they can include. And he's also probably still going to have trade value. That's going to be a fine contract. He's still going to be young, athletic, and space the floor like Drew mentioned. So for the Pacers, I think that was a no-brainer.
I think it's a really good move for Indiana, not because Toppin is not only because he's coming off a career year, shot 40% from three, really thrived playing off Tyrese Halliburton. But as you highlighted just now, the Pacers don't really have too many mid-level contracts. A lot of them are rookie deals. And for Indiana, a team that's so loaded in the front court after acquiring Pascal Siakam, you have Jarris Walker, a top 10 pick, who hardly played last year. Obi Toppin's a potential trade piece that they want to make a big splash at one of the next two trade deadlines. And $15 million in today's market is a low-level starting player to a upper echelon backup. I think that's roughly what Toppin is.
The biggest question mark with Toppin coming into this past season was his three-point shooting.
Yep.
And he improved that shooting 40% from three, and he brought them a spark off the bench. I felt like he was huge for their Eastern Conference Finals run. The bench piece that he is, a depth piece that he is, him and TJ McConnell, that's one of the best duos coming off the bench because they push the pace so much. I just worry about Jarris Walker and where he fits in all this, because I look at the Pacers and I look at Halliburton, Nembhard, Neesmith, Pascal, Miles. That's starting lineup confirmed. McConnell, Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin, all are going to be in the lineup. I'm not even mentioning Benedict Mathurin, and then we got Isaiah Jackson. There's not a lot of room for these young guys to get some playing time, but I think it was important to re-sign Obi because now that's another contracted salary you can put in a trade. Maybe if a player that's better than Obi becomes available and Indiana wants to pull the trigger because they have a lot of young guys that are intriguing and they need to match salaries.
It also depends on Nembhard's development as a secondary scorer. If he can take that leap and really be that counterpart to a Tyrese and, of course, Pascal Siakam, it'll be dependent on whether they use Toppin as a potential trade piece to maybe get that secondary scorer, because Nembhard really does dictate a lot of the future moves for the Pacers, at least I think so. But yeah, $15 million a year for a guy like Obi Toppin, it does concern me with the Jarris Walker. Obviously, we're talking about a top 10 pick, but I think that you saw that Indiana can go far in the playoffs, and although they had a little bit of help to get there, they're still a team that has a pretty high ceiling.
Right. Paul George is the biggest name in this free agency cycle.
Easily.
He's somebody that he can maybe turn the tables when it comes to the Boston Celtics not going back-to-back. And you saw the rage in my voice. We need Paul George to go somewhere.
I don't know.
And when he declined his player option, we all thought it was Philadelphia. The 76ers are going to be ultra-aggressive pursuing him. He's going to have free agent meetings with 3 teams, I believe.
Correct.
It's the Magic, it's the 76ers, and it's
pretty sure it's the Clippers.
The Clippers.
Yeah.
He might stay there too. That's always an option. I feel like in terms of impact power move, the 76ers is number one.
Is it?
If he goes to the Sixers, they now have one of the best big threes in the league, but the biggest concern with that is Joel Embiid is unavailable.
Yep.
And Paul George is a no-show in big-time moments and big-time games. So if Paul George goes to the Sixers, do I think they're the best team in the East? No, I can't think that.
You can argue that the biggest power move for Paul George would be going to the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic have a top 3 defense in the league. You add Paul George, you're getting more defense on top of that. What do they need more than anything else? A creator, and someone that can space the floor. Paul George gives you all 3 of those things that I just listed right there. You put him on the Orlando Magic next to a Paolo Banchero. That is a dangerous duo. And that only benefits Paolo more because now Paolo has the space to actually do what he wants with the basketball, unlike he's had these last 2 seasons with the Orlando Magic. And even still, they gave a great series to the Cleveland Cavaliers that they were 1 game away, potentially going on to the next round and play the Boston Celtics. What they needed was a consistent secondary scorer next to Paolo, and that's 100% Paul George.
Absolutely. Paul George to the Orlando Magic is my favorite option for him to go to because this Orlando team physically matched up very well with the Celtics. They went 2-1 versus in the regular season. But as you just highlighted now, they really are missing that perimeter shot creator. And what he can do in the regular season would elevate them to the status of a 50-win team. In the playoffs, we worry about Paul George. He's had a lot of no-shows, and specifically that in Game 7 versus the Mavericks this year, we see that oftentimes in very big moments.
Game 6.
Game 6. Mm-hmm. So we look at the Magic and Paolo Banchero's development. I think what would aid him the most is having somebody from the perimeter who can open up the game from the place of small ball 5, a little bit at the 4. And specifically for Franz, we saw him as a 3-point shooter really regress and stagnate this last year. So I think it would really ease the burden on those 2 guys in the half court. And at the same time, physically on the defensive side of the ball, Paul George would fill in pretty perfectly at 6'8".
Yeah, you're not taking anything away from the defense. That's the most exciting part about potentially adding Paul George, because we've talked about for months now at this point, adding a guy like Trae Young, adding a guy like Anthony Simons, who can bring a lead guard to this team, who could play make, who could shoot the 3, who could space the floor. But now you're taking away pretty significantly from one of the best defenses in the NBA if you're adding a 6'6" point guard to this team who's playing along Jalen Suggs now in that backcourt. But you add Paul George, who's 6'8", 6'9". He can defend. He has the size. And it's the perfect piece. The only hesitation you have when you compare it to the Sixers is when he goes there, he's probably going to be the number 2 option. You have Paolo, I think, very firmly number 1. Paul George is number 2. The 76ers is intriguing because although he does have his lowlights in the playoffs, he's the number 3 option. I think if you have Embiid healthy, which of course is always a question in the playoffs, and you have Tyrese Maxey, who already had some really high highs in that Knicks series, now all of a sudden Paul George, if he has a bad game, it's not the end of the world. If he's doing that on the Clippers, he has a bad game. We see kind of the shortcomings the Clippers have had the last couple of seasons. Mm-hmm. But if he's able to play alongside Maxey and Embiid, which is just a beautiful fit, the only question is, how do you fill out the rest of the roster? Because right now, the only other player who got any type of minutes on the Sixers team is Paul Reed. Maxey's due for an extension. He's going to get signed, and you have Embiid under contract. So you could bring in that 3rd star. But I think what we've seen really over these last 2 champions, when we look at the Celtics and the Denver Nuggets, you have the 2 stars, and then around those 2 stars, you have high level role players, borderline all-stars, and guys like Porzingis and Aaron Gordon, KCP. So the Sixers would kind of be doing the old NBA, not that it's that old, but like 5, 6, 7 years ago when you add, that 3rd star into the mix, even what the Suns did with Bradley Beal this past offseason going into the 2023 season, where we're saying, let's just add an all-star level 3 and kind of fill out the other guys with maybe an MLE here and a lot of vet minimums. That's the only concern I have if it goes to Philadelphia.
I think the point you hit on is that you really want to find complementary skill sets in your star players. And for a guy like Paul George, maybe in Philadelphia, he is a bit redundant with Tyrese Maxey on the offensive end. But can he bring a skill that's maybe complementary with a guy like Paolo Banchero driving downhill to the rim? And so I think that's where the abundance of high-level role players comes in, because you want to be able to stack the deck with guys who bring a bit of everything and are not going to leave you vulnerable in one key area. That's why the Celtics and the Nuggets felt pretty unbeatable, because there wasn't really a weakness that you could pinpoint with either of those 2 teams, with the best teams going up against them in the playoffs.
I understand that logic, but at the same time, Paul George complements Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid.
For sure.
You would like to have the luxury of building out a perfect team around your stars, but we've seen the Nuggets do it with their 2 top guys. The Celtics got 3 stars. They got Tatum, they got Brown, and they got Porzingis. Porzingis is a star.
Porzingis was never considered a star until this season.
He was always an all-star caliber player. When healthy, absolutely.
Let me not say never, because when he was on the Knicks, obviously he was an all-star. But with Dallas,
his first year in Dallas, tenure, people consider him.
First Drew year, Holiday, 2nd year, they were ready to get rid of him, and they did.
Because he was hurt. That's why. He was hurt, and he was unavailable. Drew Holiday just made the all-star game. The Celtics were able to build out a roster by buying low on guys like Porzingis. They traded a lot for Drew Holiday, and it was, quite frankly, just a perfect move.
The Porzingis trade was terrible. The fact that they got Porzingis and 2 firsts for just trading away Marcus.
No, exactly.
That
was
crazy.
They bought low on Porzingis, who's a star player, and sometimes the cookie doesn't always crumble that way. But they got very lucky and fortunate that it did. With the Sixers, it's really about do you want to add Paul George or do you want to add two players of like KCP's caliber? Because instead of adding Paul George, it could be Embiid, it could be Maxey, it could be KCP, and maybe somebody else that's an impact player. And at that point, I'd rather have Paul George. I'd rather have Paul George who can defend at an elite level, can create and really will the Sixers if Embiid is unhealthy, because I feel like the biggest shortcoming for the Sixers this past season was the fact that when Embiid got hurt, they fell off a cliff. And I think that if KCP is there, that doesn't change. But if Paul George is there, they could still stay afloat in the Eastern Conference.
It's so hard to have this conversation given the fact that the Sixers only have 4 players on their roster. We mentioned Tyrese Maxey is a restricted free agent. We're anticipating that he gets signed back. You have Jared McCain, who just got drafted. He already mentioned Joel Embiid and, of course, Paul Reed. It's so hard to see the rest of the roster, and that's why, for me right now, it's difficult to say definitively I would want Paul George. I would rather a KCP, maybe a Gary Trent, that type of route to really fill this roster. I just wish we had more than 4 guys on a roster, because then I could have a definitive opinion just to see how these guys can fit together. But I understand your logic. Paul George is a great counterpart to already Maxey and Embiid, who showed that by themselves they can have a competitive series with a real contender in the New York Knicks, and that was with Embiid not even playing at 100%. So if you add Paul George to that mix, it's not imperative that he's dropping 25 every single night, but he gives you that sound defense on the other side and can still give you 20 any given night.
The Warriors have had a terrible season, and they've also had a terrible past 24 hours.
Most definitely.
Because they offered CP3, Wiggins, Kuminga, Moses Moody, and a first-round pick for Paul George, and it got declined. The Clippers did not want to send Paul George to the Golden State Warriors. But also, Klay Thompson is leaving. He feels disrespected by the Warriors organization. And now we have a plethora of teams that can maybe use Klay Thompson's services. We talk about the Magic. They could be one. The Sixers, they could be one. The Lakers, they could be one as well.
I won't say no.
The Mavericks, they could be one. Just round table, where do you think Klay Thompson is going to end up ultimately?
I always felt he was not leaving. So it was really shocking to me to see that it was almost guaranteed he's gone. If I had to say now where I think he's going, I do believe he is going to the Dallas Mavericks. I think that it makes the most sense. It's a great fit for him. But at the same time, to me, my concerns with Klay Thompson still are real. As a creator, sometimes he forces up some bad shots. I see on defense, he's still not that same player that he once was. And that's obvious. You have a torn Achilles and a torn ACL in back-to-back seasons. It's going to take time to get back there. And honestly, at this point, at his age, it's pretty unrealistic to ask him to go out there and guard the best player on the opposing team side. But with the Mavericks, he still can space the floor for Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, still be a solid defender on the other side. But really what they need more than anything is a consistent shooter that they can rely on. PJ Washington was awesome in those first 2 rounds, but then really exposed himself in that Western Conference and the finals. Derrick Jones Jr. is another player that he caught fire early on, but then really couldn't sustain that through the entirety of their run. They need a reliable, consistent 3-point shooter, and that would be Klay. But to me, that's not the best available role player for them. It just makes sense.
What Klay Thompson feels like to me is a fallback option for many of these teams that are trying to elevate. And when I look at where he would fit best, I think it would be Orlando. And the reason why is that you want to pair him alongside a guard who can defend the point of attack and other elite level point guards. In this stage of Klay's career, as you highlighted, he cannot do that at all. He's really more of a 4 or 3.5 defensively, guarding up, not down anymore. And I feel like pairing him alongside Jalen Suggs would be ideal for him on that side of the ball, where you can kind of hide him in the corner. And if he's the worst defender in your lineup, I feel a whole lot better about him, especially in this stage. But then all offensively, like what I was talking about before, when you have a guy as explosive and physical as a downhill driver putting pressure on the paint, it's going to open up a ton of open catch and shoot looks, especially in the corner. So I think stylistically, Orlando would be the right fit for Klay Thompson. But I don't think it'll happen on day one.
I like the Lakers fit. I like the Lakers fit a lot, potentially using their MLE. LeBron already came out and said he's willing to take a pay cut to get one of Klay Thompson or Jonas Valanciunas or James Harden. I really like the Klay fit because we've heard JJ Redick talk about using Austin Reeves more as a point guard. We know LeBron's a point guard, but Austin Reeves playing the 1. Of course, you can sell Rui, AD, and LeBron. Klay Thompson fits that too pretty perfectly. I think they're going to still play Anthony Davis at the 5 and try to run a 5-out offense that has a lot to do with Anthony Davis going back to his previous form, being able to hit some jump shots, especially 3-point jump shots. Klay Thompson fits in at that number 2. I do hesitate a bit with the fit in Dallas. I don't know if he fits seamlessly alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, because I look at what made Klay so great in Golden State is just constant ball movement. We're going to go. It's constant passes, screening. I don't know if that's how Dallas is going to be using him or really just running their offense in general. We know Luka and Kyrie are going to be two of the highest ISO guys in the NBA, and we saw it could get them very far. Went to the NBA Finals a couple of years ago, went to the conference finals. Of course, that was without Kyrie, but I do hesitate with that fit. And also on the defensive side,
that's right.
Klay Thompson's not the same defensive dude we saw in his prime. Post these injuries, now he's well into his 30s at this point. You're not really adding a plus defender if you're getting Klay. I think with the Lakers, you have some defenders around him, especially Anthony Davis, protecting the rim, that you'd be able to kind of make it fit in that scenario. But with this Dallas Mavericks team, I don't see it as seamless as I do with even Orlando or the Lakers.
Right. Let's be honest with Klay. We all know he's not the same player. How much would you be willing to pay him without feeling like you're kind of getting gypped off?
20 is my absolute max.
And if you're bringing Klay Thompson, a 38 to 40% three-point shooter for that price tag, that's a win.
And Klay said he felt a little disrespected by whatever the Warriors offer was. He did reject a 2-year, $48 million contract preseason.
That's an L.
Looks like an L on his part, then W by the Warriors. Right. But hey, if Klay feels a little disrespected, if he holds a little grudge in his heart, you go to LA, you play with LeBron, you're going to see those Golden State Warriors. So that might have a little thing to do with it, too.
I'll say this. I'm not too against it. Obviously, you give us more floor spacing. You give us another guy on the defensive side of the ball. That's a win for the Lakers. But there's another player available that I would much rather have, that I already know has come in and played with us and can fit next to our guys and be successful at the highest level. I think you guys know I'm talking about KCP. But I wouldn't say no to it. Obviously, he has ties with the Lakers. He does want to wear that purple and gold. I can only assume so. And he would fit well with us. I just don't know if I'd be comfortable with it, seeing the player that he is now.
I'm tired of the Klay Thompson disrespect.
What's the disrespect?
I am. Because I feel like on one end, there's probably a group of people that overrate him, and there's probably a group of people that underrate him.
Mm-hmm. Where do we sit?
Klay Thompson, you guys think underrate him a little bit.
We're underrating him?
Klay Thompson is not a bum. Klay Thompson can
still play well. Anyone here at the table went and labeled Klay Thompson a bum.
Klay Thompson is a 20-point per game scorer. He's a 40% three-point shooter.
And in both playoffs back-to-back, he's underwhelmed.
Sadly. I understand, but he is the second scoring option next to Steph Curry. If he's the third scoring option in Dallas, I think that's his role.
I agree.
Right now, that's the best role. Offensively, I understand your concerns, Mr. Dells. My concerns more so lie on the defensive side of the ball. Because if you're bringing in Klay, that means you're losing Derrick Jones Jr. And Derrick Jones Jr. guarded the toughest assignments on defense for Dallas. They went on their win streak when they inserted him into the starting lineup. He was huge for their playoff run, and you're going to lose a lot on defense if you swap him for Klay. But the three-point shooting improves, and I think the movement is a fair point. But also, when you're moving around all these screens, it's also getting you tired out. It's also putting stress on your legs a little bit more. If you're in one spot and the gravity of Luka Doncic in these pick-and-roll situations just leaves you wide open, I think those are better shots.
Yeah.
And for Klay Thompson, I think offensively the fit for the Dallas Mavericks is perfect. Defensively, though, I just can't really see it. It would be a major downgrade because P.J. Washington will now get tasked with guarding guards, and that's not where he's at his best. I like Klay with the Lakers a little bit. I feel like defensively with Reeves and Klay in your backcourt, that is food all day.
Calm down.
It is. It's food.
I wouldn't call it food.
If the Boston Celtics face the Lakers, is that not food?
I mean, they beat us with Austin Reeves being
and D'Angelo Russell. Don't
You're
forget.
right. And Anthony Davis would be the best player in that series.
Yeah, or LeBron James.
Yeah, okay, both of them. They'd have the two best players in that series.
Didn't the Mavericks have the best player in the Celtics series? How'd that go?
Oh yeah. But then you guys
allegedly
had like the remaining
top two.
5, 6, 7.
Allegedly had top 2.
But then y'all had the 5, 6, 7 best players.
You should have thought about that when you made your predictions.
Yeah, I should have.
Damn.
But listen, with the Lakers, they got the 2 stars. You just got to build around them. I like Klay with the Magic too, but I don't know.
I've got one sleeper team.
Who's your sleeper team?
If you say the Pistons, John, I might have to beat you up. Are you saying the Pistons?
No.
San Antonio.
Why do you have to cop him off, Flo?
I'm asking.
Nice.
Okay,
So I like that. Here we
let's
go.
hear it, John.
I feel like Klay Thompson's best served as a 6-man, where he's going to have a lot of opportunity, a little bit more minutes, probably not going to close for you. And I look at the Spurs. They have their forward situation somewhat figured out with Devin Vassell at the 3, Kellen Johnson at the 4, and then you have Wemby as well. Maybe you want to play Wemby at the 4 instead with a second big. But I feel like Klay Thompson, for a team that has a lot of cap space, finished 28th in three-point shooting percentage last year. It would be a huge upgrade in the backcourt to add that shot making. If teams dare to double team Victor Wembanyama, now you've got one of the 2 to 3 greatest shooters of all time chill in the corner. He would benefit a lot from that gravity. So I think Klay to San Antonio, no one's going to think of it, but I think with that cap space, it would be a good fit for them.
It's just hard because how often do we really see a free agent go to San Antonio? I like the fit. I like the idea a lot.
Aldridge.
That's true.
36 late stages. Pau Gasol, not many.
I mean, money talks. Money talks, and especially when you get a chance to play with a player like Wemby, and you're going to be a great addition because they do need a floor spacer. I don't mind the fit there too much. It's hard for me not to see Klay at this point in time still try to go to a team that has a chance to contend and play for a championship. Magic do make a lot of sense, but to get back to the conversation talking about Klay not being in the same type of offense as he obviously has been accumulated to with the Warriors, we saw a ton of open looks for the role players of the Mavericks.
That's true.
And they just weren't hitting those shots. PJ, when the Celtics pushed him out of the corner and had to start hitting that shot at the wing, he really struggled with that. And same with Derrick Jones Jr. You know Klay can hit it anywhere on that court. So to me, I feel like that is still an obvious improvement. And so long as you have Luka and Kyrie, there's going to be space. There's going to be open opportunities. But Klay helps out Kyrie and Luka more too, because now you can't just sell out and cheat off of PJ or cheat off of a Derrick Jones. And now it'll be a little bit easier for Kyrie and Luka to get downhill.
Yeah, 3-point shooting was the Mavericks' biggest Achilles heel. PJ Washington, as great as he was in the corners in the playoffs, in the regular season, he shot 24% from the corner. He was better above the break, but they just couldn't make those shots. John, I like the Spurs fit. They have an obvious need with shooting, but I don't take Klay Thompson for a loser. He's not one. And
he wants one more payday.
The Spurs are a losing team.
They got a top 10 player in the making, and they have a good second option.
They're not making the playoffs next year. Even with Klay Thompson.
But we just
Klay
saw the Rockets.
One more payday.
We just saw the Rockets.
I want 20, 25 mil. That's where the Spurs come into play.
Wemby's not great enough to get them to the
Spurs
playoffs.
could easily win 30
right now.
10 seeds the max.
They can be
10 seeds probably.
They can be a solid 31 team next year.
Solid what?
30, like 35 win team.
They're cooked. You're not getting a 10 seed in the West.
In the Western Conference, though, there's so many great teams. I think they'd be another.
That's a 12 seed, yeah.
11 seed, yeah, probably.
We talked about Paul George. We talked about Klay Thompson. We talked about Obi Toppin in the beginning of the show. Now we're going to talk about the best available free agent, somebody we haven't mentioned just yet. I think we all know who we're thinking.
I'm assuming he's talking James Harden.
It's the next guy up. Oh, it's Mr. Fear the Beard, James Harden. We still do fear him.
It's crazy that we kind of have more conversation about Klay Thompson being a free agent. Not enough about James Harden.
No.
James Harden, to me, is definitely the second best piece, unless we count LeBron James, because obviously that's the best free agent available, but I still think that he'll be a Laker. But the fact that James Harden hasn't gotten talked about when we've seen him adjust to 3 roles in the last, 3 of the last 4 years with the Nets, with the Sixers, and now with the Clippers. He knows how to adjust to that tertiary role now. We've seen him as a secondary player. He has gotten more efficient as a 3-point shooter these last couple of seasons. He is one of the best playmakers in basketball.
Yeah.
To me, James Harden is still the second best available right now in free agency. And I get it because of the price tag. Maybe that's why people are valuing a little bit less. But $30 million for a guy that can give you a double-double any given night, can shoot 40% from 3, that is extremely valuable and extremely hard to find.
I want to see James Harden get a championship before he goes. And I think that the best team to do it with, if we're looking at all the teams, is the Los Angeles Lakers.
Talk about it.
I think if he goes just to the team next over to the Clippers, he goes to the Lakers, he takes the MLE. LeBron James signs, he takes a pay cut. With Harden, LeBron James, Anthony Davis.
And Austin Reeves.
That's Austin Reeves, yeah. I guess I have to mention
now
that.
He sleeps on Austin Reeves. Pick a side.
Hey, we're talking about James Harden. We're talking about legitimate Hall of Famers. We want to mention Austin Reeves.
Austin Reeves had generational efficiency in the WCF last year. Don't forget.
James Harden wearing that purple and gold. Oh, that'll look good.
That would be awesome.
Imagine Joel rooting for the Lakers.
I can see it.
I could barely see it.
I used to with Kobe Bryant.
Oh, I respect that. There's 10 teams who have the full MLE, right? I think some teams we could throw out, but the 10 teams are the Bulls, the Nets, Hawks, Kings, Pacers. Don't really see Hartenstein with any of those teams. Pistons, Jazz, Magic, Mavericks, and Thunder. These are teams that have the full $12.12 million. Of course, the Lakers can get that if LeBron takes a bit of a pay cut, which is already rumored to happen. The James Harden fit with Lakers is interesting because when you have him and Anthony Davis pick and roll combo, it's very intriguing. Very intriguing. Of course, you have LeBron James. He could play on ball. He could play off ball. I don't know if that makes the Lakers championship contenders with James Harden.
What? No, I'll be honest.
I don't
Nothing
know
moves him. Nothing moves him.
Anthony Davis would dominate Porzingis and Tatum down low.
First of all, they got to get to the finals.
See, can you stop going to the Celtics
First
route?
of all,
that's who we're talking
You're playing
about.
into his hand immediately.
They didn't make it past the first round last year. So before we talk, let's get to the finals. Let's just talk about Western Conference teams. If they get James Harden, would you put the Lakers over the Denver Nuggets?
Yes.
No.
They're losing KCP.
The Denver Nuggets, they can go through a bad hit this offseason.
Anthony Davis just went toe-to-toe with Jokic in that first round.
This guy just told me that Christian Brown might be their starting two guard next season.
Over the Lakers, the Nuggets what 8 and 9 against the Lakers
Listen,
last 2 years?
I'm going to sit here and eat a slice of humble pie. The Nuggets have owned us these last 2
9 and
seasons,
10.
no doubt about it.
They have owned them, but the Lakers led in that first round for 73% of the series. If you get a
You
brilliant,
sounded like him.
If you get a
You
brilliant
sounded
coach,
like him.
We just needed D'Angelo Russell to be consistently good,
Yeah.
and we needed a true closer. We didn't have a
Brother.
closer consistently.
What is the difference between D'Lo and James Harden the next 2 years as Harden continues to age?
Harden's a better
as a great
playmaker.
playmaker.
Okay.
And defensively, it's pretty much the same, truthfully.
But what you're really searching
Harden's
for
a better big-time player.
So
that-
that means we're going into
Yeah.
next season.
Yes.
Denver and LA matches up in the playoffs. Your prediction is Lakers. Your prediction is Lakers.
Hell yeah.
What the Lakers are really searching for is a reliable go-to shot creator.
I mean, it's off season. This is hypotheticals. These
Listen,
are conversations
you're
we can
talking
have.
super, super loud. Like you didn't watch the series. We
I
lost.
didn't.
We lost.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Lost to 5.
All right, listen, we lost in 5. I understand this. However, watching the series.
How they lost to Mavericks.
Yes. You know what, man? Where was this 2 months ago, man?
I did
No, you
say-
weren't here in the
Yes,
trenches
I did.
with me.
I did
You
say
weren't
if
here in the
coaching-
trenches
if
with me.
coaching was
Laker guy.
different,
Yeah,
the
now we
Lakers could
gotta
have
do-
won the series.
Listen,
now you got a brilliant coach in JJ Redick.
That's
Listen, I-
that
that's a
moves more
TBD.
than James
That's a
Harden.
TBD.
I've seen
Oh,
his
he hasn't
podcast. He's
started.
brilliant.
Oh, here we go.
I know he's brilliant. He's a brilliant basketball mind. James Harden, for the first 3 games of the first round against the Mavericks,
He played really well.
He was the best player in that
played
series.
really well.
You could argue. For the series, he averaged 21, 5, and 8. He played great. His efficiency was great.
Game 6, he was.
I feel like if you play next to a guy like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the pressure just goes off you so quickly. And yes, I think they would be.
Didn't we have that
I can
same
argue.
argument
I can argue otherwise.
the
It does
Clippers?
not. The pressure does not go off of you because we've seen the role players around them sometimes just get to
I know.
them, and they honestly don't play up
I'm
to
just
par.
talking about from the defensive attention aspect.
Hold on, time out. Because just before we talk about Klay Thompson, you said Austin Reeves and Klay Thompson backcourt is food. What's a James Harden and Austin Reeves backcourt?
It's a
we've
buffet.
already seen it.
It's a buffet.
We've
Right.
already seen
It's
it
a buffet.
with D'Lo and Reeves, and we've gotten torched. But the offense was pretty awesome, and D'Lo was pretty
You
great
guys are
shooting the
playing the
basketball.
best offense in years.
Listen, and
the
right
second
now,
half of the
D'Angelo
season.
Russell's still on the team. He
Yes.
just opted in.
Your guys are aggressively pursuing a trade.
See, but that's why I don't know. I don't know who would we be getting. You know what I mean? So, are we getting another wing?
What if
I
you
would
trade?
love that.
What if you trade D'Lo to the Magic for Jonathan Isaac?
Why would the Magic do that?
They need a
The Magic
combo
are saying, I
guard.
appreciate it.
If we get Jonathan Isaac.
They're not trading Jonathan Isaac.
Ah, you're getting scared now. He's getting scared. He's getting scary.
Because you
He's
know
getting
Jonathan
scared.
Isaac knows how to stop Jason Tatum. I don't know about Jaylen Brown, but he can stop Jason Tatum.
Okay, I'm the Lakers, or excuse me, I'm the Magic, you're the Lakers. Convince me to trade Jonathan Isaac for D'Lo.
All right, D'Angelo Russell is a floor space for you. You're the worst three-point shooting team in the league, arguably, and amongst playoff teams, you're easily the worst three-point shooting team.
Yep.
Jonathan Isaac is an amazing defender. He definitely benefits your guys' defense, but what you guys really need is a scorer and a perimeter scorer at that too.
I know. use our $30 million
I got
plus in cap
52.
space.
I have $50 million in cap space.
Okay.
Let me go get a 3-point shooter on the open market and keep Jonathan Isaac, who was just carrying partially one of our best.
Here's the
defense.
thing about Jonathan Isaac. As great as he is, he's injury prone.
He is.
And the Lakers would be taking a gamble
We
there.
don't really care. We re-signed him. We know he's injury prone. We still wanted him.
I'll tell you what, the Orlando Magic have shown an extreme amount of loyalty to Jonathan Isaac.
As they
and
should.
it paid off.
As they-
And it paid
It's
off.
worked out.
We can
They've gotten 2 awesome seasons from
we can circle back on Harden a little bit later and talk about other fits. Next name up, Tyrese Maxey. We're all expecting him to
Sixer.
re-sign
guaranteed.
with the Sixers.
5 years, $200+ million. Great deal.
Yeah. Max contract. He's
Easily.
that guy. He's an all-star level player.
Not thinking about that one too much, understanding he was sensational against the Knicks. Honestly, he's been a great playoff performer. These last 2 seasons, he has been as consistent as could possibly be. That series versus Boston, he was awesome 2 years ago. But this past season versus the Knicks, hitting that damn near half-court shot to extend the series. Tyrese Maxey is a big-time player. The Sixers would be foolish to let him go. I just don't see it happen.
A brief reminder in that Knicks series, Tyrese played 45 minutes a game, shot 40% from 3, averaged 30 points a game, and 7 assists.
He's unreal.
Was he better than Brunson that series? Honest question.
Shit,
No.
they went bar for bar.
Consistency-wise,
No, Brunson was better.
Brunson the first 2 games
He was mid.
And then
like
he
a
went
D,
crazy.
and then he cooked.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then he was
Brunson
historic.
was bad the
Maxey
first 2
shot
games. They went up
40.
2-0, right?
They did go
Oh,
up to it.
shit,
And then they lost game 3
That's why
When he
you
went
build
crazy.
a team.
when he went crazy.
Yeah, that's what I try to tell you. I think the best part about Tyrese Maxey and his game is that year after year he improves.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing you want to see from your star player. This is a guy they took in the 20s, right? This is a guy that had to develop on the
Get
bench.
that outta here.
He was looking like he could potentially be a starter. Then they trade for James Harden, and then they go into the next season. James Harden's going to be our starter. Max, you got to come off the bench. He took basically every punch that came his way, every obstacle that came his way. He just worked every offseason. Now he's turned to an all-star, borderline all-NBA guard. 5 years, $200 million. He proved this season and in these playoffs he could be a number 2 potentially on a championship team. We need Joel Embiid to be 100%, but even Embiid not at 100% this past season. He still gave the Knicks 50. They still won 6 games. A couple possessions go a different way. That could be a 7-game series, and then who knows? Potentially we see the 76ers advance in the second round. But Maxey's a homegrown player in Philly. He's phenomenal. Yeah.
Around Tyrese Maxey, they need to build a team around him and Joel Embiid. We mentioned Paul George earlier and the potential fit there. I think the only question marks that arises with that is how does that affect Maxey? Because if you bring in Paul George, you're taking away a lot of Maxey's touches, and he grew in a big way as a point guard as well. So around Maxey, Embiid, they got Paul Reed, McCain. They don't have many players on this roster. What are the most ideal fits?
This current 76ers under contract's hilarious, by the way. Outside of Embiid, you have Jared McCain, Adam Bona, KJ Martin, Mo Bamba, and Ricky Council.
Don't sleep on Adam Bona. Don't sleep on him.
I'm going to say this. If Paul George were to be that new addition for the Sixers, we've seen him have success off ball. He can be a player for them that doesn't necessarily take away all of Maxey's touches and kind of ruins his flow to the game. We know Embiid's going to have the ball in his hand a ton, rightfully so. He's a top 5 player when he's healthy in the NBA. But because Paul George has a season under his belt, playing next to Kawhi Leonard, playing next to, of course, James Harden, he has done a great job of being that secondary, at times tertiary guy. He does not need the ball in his hands at all times to be successful. He knows how to play off ball, and we've seen it for at least 2 seasons now.
I think that's the ideal fit when we're talking about Paul George potentially going to the Sixers, that he can play off ball. Is that, like you mentioned, Drew, there's always concerns with fit amongst teams. That's why Paul George is so valuable, because he can play off ball. He doesn't need to be ball dominant. That's why I think there's still some questions with James Harden potentially on the Sixers. But that's why you have LeBron James, who could play off ball, although I want him to have the ball as much as he can. When you put James Harden, suddenly he has to be in the corner and he doesn't have the ball in his hands. Right. You're taking away a lot from his game. Paul George is still really strong as a playmaker. He's a good passer, but he could sit in that corner or at that wing and shoot 40% from 3 and fit perfectly. And it's also nice, just from a team building perspective, when you have your guard in Tyrese Maxey, you have your wing in Paul George, and you have your big in Joel Embiid. It just fits nicely when you have a guy at each of those positions to take on defensive assignments, more so for Paul George. Maxey's not a top-tier defender, but I think he's above-average defender, at least for his size, since he's a bit undersized, just from a little skinny.
Gotcha.
And then Joel Embiid protecting the rim. And offensively, you could do actions with Paul George and Maxey together. You could have screens or inverted screens and find mismatches that way too.
Right. I think what Philly really needs is surefire shooters that are not going to hesitate. This last year, they're 22nd in three-point makes and 19th in three-point attempts. And a guy like Paul George will fire away 7 to 9 attempts, kind of the antithesis of what Tobias Harris was. Someone who's hesitant, not always willing to fire away. I also think the other part of what Philadelphia's offense could add is rim pressure. I don't think Paul George brings that. In this stage of his career, he's not going to get downhill as much as he was back a decade ago in Indiana. But I think it's a good fit for that very reason. Offensively, the shooting between him and Maxey, that's like 17 to 18 three-point attempts a game, and those two guys are making damn near 40%.
So if they sign Paul George, right, he's going to get $40+ million a year, which means Philadelphia, the cap space would be under $20 million. They'd still have the MLE, I believe, because they would have the cap space. What other players do you think they could pursue?
This is where it gets tough for me, and I look at the available free agents, understanding that it's becoming a wing-dominant league. It now becomes even more imperative that you do bring in a Paul George to help solidify that. But again, how's the remaining roster looking? Would it be possible to bring back a Tobias Harris on that type of contract? Would it be possible to,
They're over that.
I think Tobias Harris, though, where he is unreliable as a scorer, still provides you a certain level of defense, can still be a spot up guy, is definitely not the player that can put the ball on the floor and get you a bucket. He can be a strong role player for a team, and I feel like Tobias can be one of those silent guys that moves and goes to a great team just to fulfill a role, will give you sound defense, can knock down an open jump shot. If he were to be willing to adjust to another role like that, like we've seen already that he's done with the 76ers when it was Ben, when it was Jimmy, when it was Embiid and him, if he can be that guy and take a pay cut to stay with the Sixers, to me that does become enticing just because of how essential it is to have multiple wings on your team. But again, he's not that type of player that they wanted him to be this past postseason.
They should be over him. If I'm Philadelphia, there's no shot in bringing back Tobias Harris.
Yeah, no doubt. Tobias Harris just has 0 points, 29 minutes in the closeout game. that is the perfect Piston.
But again, I think his days of getting insane money are obviously gone. If he were to take a middling type of offer, and if I can keep him on my roster, he's still a good player and a solid player to have on my team.
Before you go, John, here's the problem with the free agents, right? And I think that's why we're mocking Paul George to the Sixers so much. There's no forwards on the market.
Really, no.
You have Tobias Harris, Gordon Hayward, DeMar DeRozan, Doug McDermott, Covington, Batum, Kyle Anderson, Miles Bridges, Caleb Martin, Derrick Jones Jr., Taurean Prince.
Okay, DeMar.
We're not talking about that. I like that more.
DeMar doesn't fit on every team, but DeMar fits, I think, on this Sixers team. Because you already have the spacing there with Tyrese Maxey. You have Embiid who could hit threes, but of course is going to get a ton of touches in the post. The biggest issue with DeMar in 99% of places is that he is not a three-point shooter. He is 99% of his game is from that mid-range. He's one of the better mid-range shooters in the NBA. He's one of the best fourth quarter players as well in the NBA too.
He is clutch.
He fits with the Sixers. I don't know if adding Paul George and DeMar might be a bit too much to just add in one season, trying to figure this out on the fly. Of course, you still have training camp and everything. That might be a lot to add on. But as a piece, if you strike out on Paul George, I think Maxey, DeMar, and Embiid, although does that put you in a championship caliber kind of sphere? Probably not. But I think from a team perspective, that fits.
DeMar is one of the most difficult free agents to really predict because he's still a very good player. Just in a vacuum, he is a good player. The issue that I have with DeMar and why he would be on my bottom tier of free agents is because his skill set does not fit a championship.
It's not
team.
scalable.
It's not. And at this point in his career where he still has not become a great three-point shooter, he's getting up there in age. He's not a great defender. His offense from the mid-range, getting downhill, being a playmaker, he has that to his game. But again, what helps in age championship teams, I don't see DeMar being a part of that. However, let's stick in this conversation that they do decide to go the route of a DeMar. Mm-hmm. What's the contract looking like? That's another reason why it becomes so difficult to talk.
I think you give a 2-year deal.
Listen, I think DeMar DeRozan is what you said is perfect. It's hard to evaluate him correctly because I think a lot of times we undersell DeMar because he is a great player. He just averaged 24, 4, and 5.
Yep.
He's not going to go sign somewhere for nothing. He's going to get a good, sizable contract. And this past season, he shot 33% from three. Still not a great number, but he's taken it more, about 3 attempts, and he shot 44% from the left corner. So that, I think, is at least like a good sign that he's willing to take them nowadays. DeMar's an excellent player, though. I just don't know if I see him going to a contender because a lot of contenders really don't need what he offers because he's never been that great of a defender. He's not a great three-point shooter. He is a great mid-range shooter, and he's a really good playmaker. He developed that in San Antonio, so that's a good thing. I think the Sixers fit is pretty fine. I don't think if they get DeMar, though, they're getting Paul George, too.
Yeah.
It'll be probably DeMar and KCP if you want to go that route.
That's why I ask, what's the contract going to look like with DeMar? Because if DeMar's contract is nothing egregious.
What do we think, 25 a year?
25 to 30
2
a
for
million.
50?
No, he's going to get 30 at least. And that's where it becomes
Who else is
difficult.
giving him that money?
The market is
I'll be
not.
honest, the Pistons need something to be optimistic about. If he really wants money, he can go to Detroit.
Be an abomination.
I mean, it's already an abomination. That
you
being
would be
said,
making it the worst
he's
thing I've
trying
ever
to
seen in
get.
my life.
He's trying to get paid.
No, you wouldn't, bro.
What?
Stop. You're not. They started Jaden Ivey. DeMar's not giving you worse space than Jaden Ivey.
And I mean, Asar Thompson also, we understand he's just not a great 3-point shooter. You just drafted Ron Holland.
If you add,
they need talent.
Yes.
They need some veteranship. He definitely provides that. But again, like he just said,
But if he's going
24,
to Detroit,
5 and 4,
might as well go back to Chicago at that point.
Yeah,
He has a home in Chicago.
But the thing is, maybe Chicago doesn't want to give him that bread.
That's
and
fair.
understandably
I think a sign and trade with DeMar is also in the cards. If the Clippers lose Paul George, they're still going to want some sort of second star to be next to Kawhi if James Harden leaves
terrible.
too. It's not great, but there's not a lot of options out there for the Clippers.
I think the Clippers is probably like a realistic destination. With the Pistons, I mean, you're adding 24 a night to Detroit.
Yes,
I mean,
and that's a win.
That is a huge upgrade from whenever they
Detroit Pistons fans wanted Zach LaVine to get traded to them just because they needed something to be optimistic about and some type of production. DeMar DeRozan gives you that. He's probably going to get a lot of money. The Pistons have money to offer.
They also picked up Tim Hardaway in the Quentin Grimes deal, who didn't shoot well, but historically has been a good 3-point shooter.
He's just up and down.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I say this with the idea
might be the
of,
best 3-point shooter.
let's say he is. No, there's no. He
shot 35% from three this past year.
Cade might be their best 3-point shooter. Let's say he signs for 30 to 35 million, right? I think I'm being kind here, but let's say 35 million. Then you have the opportunity to bring in a KCP. Also, now I'm intrigued. But again, it's so hard to judge what DeMar DeRozan's contract is going to be that it becomes difficult to potentially mock him to go to Philadelphia.
I don't know if it's just me, but I think of all the free agents that we've talked about, the one that has the potential to have the most impact is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
For sure.
I think KCP, because of the contract he'll get, maybe a team overpays for him a little bit more because he's such a great role player. But he has a chance to really change a team's landscape because of what he can add as a shooter and as a defender. I really hope that he signs with a contender because I don't want to see him with a middle of the pack or a terrible team because I think he should be competing for a championship. I think him in Philadelphia is already a shoo-in. You can lock it in. I think KCP is going to Philadelphia.
Really?
I think he is.
What made you suddenly?
Because they have the money to pay him, to overpay for him, slightly overpay for him. And I don't think they're going to go star hunting. I know they said they're going to aggressively pursue Paul George, but I think Daryl Morey's smarter than that. I think Daryl Morey's not going to use all of his cap space on one guy. He's going to add a 3-point shooter and a defender. And you look at the free agents on the market. KCP, if they get him, they could still bring back DeAnthony Melton. I think that would be great. Kelly Oubre just spoke highly of Nick Nurse, and I think Kelly Oubre is going to be back.
He was awesome
last year. Yeah, and he was awesome. He was really good as a defender, too, in the playoffs against Jalen Brunson. And then with KCP, even if you bring back those other guys, you can still maybe bring in Klay Thompson, too, because they will have money. Maybe you take a swing on a guy like Miles Bridges. Maybe you sign somebody like Caleb Martin, or you take a flyer on somebody like Sadiq Bey. Yeah. I think there's a lot of options for the Sixers to just take swings on very talented players and putting them in good situations and seeing how it pans out.
I don't know if, because Dallas doesn't have money. There's a report from the Athletic saying there's now doubt Derrick Jones Jr. returns to the Dallas Mavericks. That could do with
Klay
Klay Thompson potentially going there. But Dallas is a place where if KCP wants to take a bit of a pay cut because you're only getting the MLE $12-13 million, that's a perfect spot for him too.
Yeah, but here's the thing I struggle with that, is that KCP could have gotten the MLE in Denver.
It's a fair point.
So if KCP could have gotten that offer in Denver,
might as well
he would just stay in Denver.
Because you could get 20 mil in Philadelphia because they have the cap space to do so.
I was going to say he's looking for 20 to 25 million annually.
Dallas, never mind.
That's where it becomes very difficult. Philadelphia definitely does make sense. I do also look at a situation like the Orlando Magic. Again, fits the mold. fits the mold perfectly, understanding that he can stretch the floor. That's exactly what they do need. Can defend at a very high level. Obviously, that fits the Orlando Magic to a T. I just think that bang for your buck, the best available role player is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and the Magic exactly need that.
Lakers, we have a tweet to show.
Now to LeBron James and the Lakers. We're going to have a tweet up on the screen shortly. LeBron James rumor since Lakers star goes year to year amid contract decision.
I'll be transparent.
That's what he's been doing, right?
That is okay with me. Well, what he's been doing has been signing like a 2-3 year max contract type deal. So, yeah, that's essentially it. But a 1 year deal is fine with me. Trying to also gauge the future of the Los Angeles Lakers, also put pressure on them to actually make moves to put a contender forward. He's kind of using this as leverage as, listen, I'm going to be 40 years old this season. I still am a top 10 player in the league. You have to still do everything you can to put a contender out there. But if he's going to be real and take a pay cut, which would shock me, he's already been on record saying, I'm never playing for anything less than a max contract. He's lived up to that so far. If he does take a pay cut, he is dead serious about winning another championship, and it would only benefit the Lakers. I do have a hard time seeing him do it, though, because he's already been so vocal about not taking a pay cut before and still having lived that so far. I would love it, obviously, as a Lake fan, LeBron fan. I would love to see him really put together, or the Lakers put together, a great, strong team to potentially get them to be really strong contenders. Maybe bring in a KCP, maybe bring in a Klay Thompson, potentially a James Harden. I think what the Lakers need more than anything is a true center. Move Anthony Davis to the 4. To me, that's where I've seen him play his best brand of basketball. That's when he was best in conversations for best in the world, when he was playing at that 4. But you need to get a real big, so then that way we can have some depth behind Anthony Davis, get a little bit more floor spacing. I think that the Los Angeles Lakers have a strong chance to move the needle going into next season. But again, it all begins and ends with what LeBron James wants to do with this contract.
Fun fact about the Lakers. Whenever the Celtics have won a championship, they have won the very year after. Last time it happened in 2008, the Lakers won in 2009 and in 2010. Just saying, Dels.
It sounds like he's coming along on the wave.
He's desperate to be a Lakers fan.
You know what it is, bro? It's that because I show love to the Knicks. He's showing love to my Lakers.
Look at that book to your right, man.
3-ring circus, man.
Look at Lakers jersey right there next to
fact.
you. The camera can't see it right now, but we got
way too many Lakers gear around me. I understand LeBron not wanting to pay for less than the max. LeBron James, you're not going to go out there sign vet minimums. You're that dude. But I also think the fact that he's bringing it up, exploring the idea of taking a pay cut, just goes to show that there's probably a real chance he does. If you're LeBron James,
I feel like I'm getting teased.
He's $1 billion dude. He has anything he ever wants paid for. He has every connection in the world. What do you really gain from taking a max contract when the outcome of that, or the other side is you're not going to be able to improve the roster as much? LeBron's a very self-aware guy. I think he goes into next season knowing that if we're keeping, as of right now, D'Lo, Austin Reeves, himself, LeBron, Rui, and AD, that's probably not a championship caliber roster.
Respect Dalton Connect, please.
Dalton Connect's going to come off the bench. I don't think he's going to start.
No,
he's not going to start, right? But that was a great pickup. A guy who's going to come in day one, be able to play in the NBA.
He's at least Sam Hauser.
If you're Sam Hauser's one of them ones. He's the NBA champion now. Don't forget that.
He caught fire. I'll give him his respect.
But LeBron knows that there's still at least one more piece missing from this team. If he takes the pay cut, especially year to year, where his money kind of comes off the books, although they're still going to have his bird right, so there's still implications when it comes to cap space. That shows just what LeBron's headspace is at right now. JJ Redick was an upgrade. Dalton Connect's going to improve the spacing, but we still need another dude to kind of get over the hump.
You're not a fan of this roster right here?
I like that roster. That's a playoff roster. That's a roster that can potentially go to the WCF.
If you look at that roster, D'Lo, Reeves, Rui, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, of course, coming back. Dalton Connect, Vando.
Bronny James.
It's a little guard heavy. Yeah. I didn't want to mention the last two, really.
Listen, bro, 3-and-D. Plays hard defense off the bench. That's all I can ask for in like 15 minutes.
It's a little guard heavy, but that's a really good roster.
I'm being kind. It's LeBron James' son. Who knows? It's not insane.
Yeah.
No,
he's not going to play.
FD had a plus 3,000 for him to score 25 points.
In any game?
Any game, 25 points. Interesting. April runs. Who knows?
But you look at that roster and you think about the fact that they're going to add LeBron James and possibly one of those impact free agents. That's a very good roster. I think you would need to make a trade or two to add some more wings to the roster. But with D'Lo as a trade piece, maybe you dangle Austin Reeves around a little bit. You can get something.
Austin Reeves he's not moving. He's fringe untouchable, honestly.
Fringe untouchable is crazy.
I only say that with the way that JJ Redick has talked so highly of Austin Reeves. I'm fully going into next season with the idea that Austin Reeves is our point guard. But D'Lo is definitely a trade piece. I don't love the idea, but Rui Hachimura has definitely entered those conversations also. Solid contract, was awesome last season. Didn't have his best showing against the Denver Nuggets, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but he has really taken huge strides in his offensive game these last 2 seasons with the Los Angeles Lakers. That D'Lo, Rui Hachimura with a combination of picks, we're not going to get a superstar, no way, no how with those 2 guys, but we can definitely get a strong upgrade to our wing, maybe get a potential big, because you've seen the way that these new teams have come in and really become strong contenders. Look at Dallas, did it with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. You look at the Boston Celtics, did it a little undersized for the fact that Kristaps Porzingis was hurt a majority of your run, but Tillman came in and did a great job as a reserve, and of course Al Horford, understanding that he's been such a staple for the Boston Celtics. We see bigs just be so impactful. Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, they're so impactful for just closing down the interior of the paint. Having solid rebounding is super essential. The Los Angeles Lakers, the last couple of seasons, simply have not done that for Anthony Davis. He really has no help on the backside, and when he's off the court, those minutes killed the Los Angeles Lakers' momentum, where he has to play an exuberant amount of minutes. So I would love if that was really our primary target. Go and get him a true center, a backup center, right, whether that is overpaying for one, maybe potentially in an Isaiah Hartenstein. But again, I am not against LeBron taking a pay cut for obvious reasons, but it's going to be hard to see.
Right. He would have to take roughly $16 million less, reporting to Hoopside, for them to open up underneath the first apron the full taxpayer for around $12 million. But who do you guys think among available candidates would be the best possible fit for the Lakers to bring in?
Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
But it's unlikely because, again, if he could get $20 million from the Sixers, why would I take 12 from the Lakers?
Because he's coming back home.
I got a name for you guys, and it's one we haven't mentioned all stream. It's Najee Marshall. I think Najee Marshall is an excellent defender. He's a great defender. He's a really good shooter, and he was a great role player for the Pelicans this past season. For a mid-level exception, maybe it's a little too much.
A little?
But not giving him the full 12.
You're not getting KCP.
If we give him
MLE.
the MLE, I'm done with the Lakers.
You can give him part of that.
You're
Like
not,
4 of your 8, $12 million. Save the 8 for someone like Nick
let's
Batum.
Just be real. Let's
Maybe
just
get
be
Nick
real.
Batum and
Let's
Najee
just be
Marshall.
real. You're not getting KCP for the MLE. Klay Thompson is still a to be determined. We don't know if he's going for the MLE. But based on the disrespect he felt from the Warriors, I feel like he's seeking money and a good situation.
Najee Marshall did shoot 39% from 3 last year. The previous years were 30% and 20%. Not saying, listen, he's a young player, 26 years old. This is year 2, 3, 4 in the NBA. So maybe the 3-point shot has just evolved with his game. But you're taking a bit of a risk. This is a guy that has really 1 year showing you that he could be a respectable 3-point shooter.
I'm also saying this as a guy who has Cam Reddish on the roster. Guy has no offense to his game, but defensively is awesome. Most definitely. Yeah, on the defensive side of the ball, Cam Reddish got it.
Najee's better.
Reddish was a really good defender.
Cam Reddish on defense was amazing.
Najee was better. Najee is 6'7", 220 pounds. Right, we just saw the Lakers roster.
He's a better player because of his offense. Defensively, Cam Reddish, that's really the only reason he's on roster still.
We just saw the Lakers roster on the screen. They have a lot of guards. You need some size. JJ Redick in his press conference mentioned it when he was introduced as the Lakers head coach.
Do we have a lot of guards?
You do.
It's D'Lo, it's Reeves, it's Gabe.
D'Lo is more likely than not, in my opinion, and what it sounds like from reports is to get moved. So I'm not really expecting D'Lo to be on this team.
Max Christie too. Max Christie's a guard.
What point of attack defenders do you have on the roster?
They don't exist.
No one.
Exactly. You need that. And JJ Redick in his press conference said that in this league you need wings that could defend.
Well, the point of attack defender is Vanderbilt.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but sometimes he can't play because of spacing issues.
This season should be the healthiest he's been in a while. It
Hopefully.
should 100. Yeah. He is our point of attack defender. We saw it 2 years ago when he took the most difficult assignment in every series. And until we got to the Nuggets where he got played off the court, he was exceptional for us and one of the main reasons our defense was so great. He is our point of attack defender. That is a great option to have. He just needs to hit the 3-point shot, which he has not been able to do.
I mean, that's true. But the thing is, what I'm saying with the Lakers is that JJ said that he wants wings that can defend and that can shoot. Najee Marshall shot 44% from the left corner, 40% from the right corner, 38% above the break. He was very great as a shooter last year, and you need somebody of his size at 6'7" that can defend. He's somebody he could start for the Lakers.
I'll say this: it's just hearing all these names where I'm flirting with the idea of having KCP on my team, a Klay Thompson. You throw a Najee Marshall at me, of course, I'm gonna be a little bit disappointed in that. But when it comes to being a very firm role player, you're sound, and I understand where you're coming from. I just feel like, where I've trying to stay consistent this whole time we're here talking, you need wing depth and you need to stay solid in your front court. And the Lakers right now are weak in both of those spots.
Amongst the players that LeBron is willing to take a pay cut for, Jonas Valanciunas made the cut.
That was a surprising one.
One of the three.
But
it's not that surprising because Jonas Valanciunas could play the 5. He's a elite rebounder, and he's a great post scorer. In some series, he will not be able to play, but I felt like when the Lakers went on their finals run in the bubble, Anthony Davis sometimes started at the 5 based on matchups. So I think based on matchups, they will still have the versatility to start AD, and Jonas won't get as much minutes. But Jonas, he could start the entire series and the entire season alongside Anthony Davis and bring physicality, bring rebounding, and really keep Anthony Davis fresh for a postseason run.
That's really all I can ask for as a Lakers fan. If you can just give Anthony Davis any type of breather as having to be not just the roamer, not just the rim protector, having to go out on the perimeter sometimes and switch on to guards, he needs some type of help in that front court. It's getting to the point where what more can he do defensively? And then offensively, now we're asking him to go and give you 25 to 28 points on any given night. He needs some help on that backside. The Lakers have failed to do that these last 2 seasons. JJ needs to make it a point of emphasis to go out there and get a big man to help AD, no doubt.
I'll be honest, I don't know how Jonas Valanciunas fits alongside AD. He took 1 3-point attempt per game this year, and the half court, those two guys would be really kind of clunky together in the spacing side of things. And then defensively, he's not a rim protector. I feel like for the Lakers, what you'd want is a Miles Turner, if you will, someone who is long reports.
That's unrealistic.
They're just unavailable. No, he's saying play style.
Yeah. The skill set, because Turner can be in past years, good rim protector, or at least a good shot blocker as a stand-up 5. That can open up the floor.
What available big right now can space the floor for you?
Jonas, I think we might be thinking of it backwards.
Moritz Wagner.
Mo Wagner would be tough.
Mo Wagner, I wouldn't say no to.
You could give him the full MLE.
But I think what the Lakers have been missing, what you guys have been missing the last couple of years, Drew, what you've been missing the last couple of years, I think, is a backup big.
Correct.
You bet Wenyen Gabriel, it's
Christian Wood this past season, but he got injured.
You haven't had a big Jackson Hayes. You haven't had a backup big that I think you're confident in game to game.
I wouldn't go that
If you bring in Jonas, you have that now to play behind Anthony Davis. Does that, again, move the needle for you? Because can he really play more than 15 minutes a night when you have Anthony Davis out there? I don't know. But I think that gives you some level of comfort. One, if Anthony Davis has to miss some time in the regular season, now you're bringing in a big that is a lot better than the backups you've had these last couple of seasons. But you also have someone in the playoffs that once AD comes off the court, he could grab rebounds, like you mentioned, Joel. He's not a complete zero on offense, although he's not 100 by any means. But what's the other name, John?
That name to me is Goga Badate. This last year, when Wendell Carter went down, he was one of the better rim protectors and rebounders of the 5. He has not been able to translate the 3-point shot to the NBA at all, but as a backup 5 in minutes in games where AD is out, he would really be a good number 2 big. And honestly, I think he's worth a whole lot more than the vet minimum. But it seems like his market might be just like the biannual, a few $1 million a year. And that, to me, will be an insane bargain for a good backup.
There's a lot of good backup centers. Xavier Tillman comes to mind. He's a free agent. He could definitely add defense to the Lakers. I'm not worried about Jonas Valanciunas' spacing on offense because when the Lakers won the championship, JaVale McGee started the whole season. I understand.
10 minutes in the playoffs.
I know, but I'm saying Jonas doesn't have to start every playoff series. You think that JJ Redick's gonna start Jonas if they match up against the Celtics? No, he's not. He's gonna adjust, and that's what you have when you have a luxury having a really good roster. You adjust to your personnel. So with Jonas, This is just a regular season move to keep your guy fresh, who can average 16 and 10 on any given night, who can get 15
That
boards a night.
2020 roster, though, did have a luxury of multiple bigs. We had JaVale, we
had
had
Dwight,
AD,
and
we had Dwight.
Yeah, but you could get Jonas and you can get a vet minimum big.
See, like, if Christian Wood is my third big, I'm okay with that. He's actually solid on offense, can stretch the floor for us. Defensively, that's where we do have our issues when it comes to Christian. I feel like I would rather a more defensively sound backup big, but again, beggars can't be choosers, especially with this market and the available big men.
Honestly, if I'm the Lakers, I'd rather take that mid-level exception. If you get the full mid-level, let's say $12 million, and put that on a two-way wing player, someone like Nick Batum, Caleb Martin, and then with that remaining few $1 million, put it on a Goga Batum.
Nick Batum on a full MLE is nuts.
No,
I didn't say that. I said
he's saying
part of
not
that.
the full thing.
$9 million,
Correct.
$8 million for 1 or 2 years.
Let me also say
he was
this.
awesome this last year in Philadelphia.
He did have himself a good moment in the playoffs. I'll say this, though. If LeBron James is willing to take a pay cut with the opportunity and with the rumors circulating that James Harden could potentially be coming to town, James Harden is going to be getting $30 million. If that means that we can bring on a contract of a $30 million, that means we can bring on a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Well, James Harden will be signed for the MLE. Because you don't have cap space.
That's
Even if
true.
LeBron takes a pay cut.
But then ultimately what that means to me too is that D'Lo is definitely getting traded.
Yes.
Rui Hachimura is definitely getting traded.
Why, definitely.
Because then it frees up even more cap space.
Yeah, but I don't think any move frees up cap space. This just frees up the MLE.
Well, just for annual salary, D'Lo is getting paid, I think it's $20 million this season, or I think that's what he's opting into.
Let's see.
And then Rui Hachimura just signed his deal last season. I believe it was $60 million around
Right
that.
now, you guys are $22 million over the cap.
Well, I think the conclusion we're coming to right now is that only those impact guys like KCP, Harden, Klay, they're only coming to the Lakers if they're taking a massive pay cut.
Yes.
Which is unlikely based on the market that's going to be had for those guys. So when we talk about the MLE, we are talking about guys like Jonas Valanciunas. We are talking about a guy like maybe Mo Wagner. We're talking about those.
James Harden's
type
not
of
no MLE
players.
player.
He's not. But also, James Harden probably doesn't have a ton of options to get paid and compete. Like, he's not going back to Philly. We know that. I don't think he's going to sign with the Spurs or with Detroit. So you could go to LA. Or exactly, that's the other option. He stays in LA, but with the other team being the Clippers.
Yeah.
Isaiah Hartenstein.
Talking about big men, we mentioned Jonas Valanciunas. Now we're going to mention a New York Knicks legend, Isaiah Hartenstein.
He is.
Isaiah Hartenstein, this is the guy that I'm fearful for the most that the Knicks are probably going to lose, because OKC is right there with cap space, ready to spend, even though OKC made two moves that caught my attention. Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, they declined their qualifying offer, so they're going to have to pay them market value money, which means Isaiah Hartenstein might not go there. But we got a tweet that Isaiah Hartenstein is expected to be a top target for several opposing teams in free agency with the offers that Hartenstein is expected to command on open market. It's becoming increasingly unlikely that the New York Knicks will be able to retain Hartenstein per SNY sources.
And that is a punch to the stomach.
If this is the case, I think the obvious landing spot for him is OKC.
Yeah.
Even if it's coming off the bench, I think they have the luxury to do that.
Yeah.
And they need physicality. They need toughness. They need rebounding. And Isaiah Hartenstein checks every single box.
I mean, it just makes too much sense for Isaiah Hartenstein to go to OKC. I understand that they have something nice going there with, of course, Chet Holmgren, his ability to stretch the floor. Obviously, he's one of the better rim protectors, too, with that size that he has. We saw it in the postseason on full display. But Hartenstein gives you that level of rebounding. Offensively, he's not a negative by any means, has great touch, can be a connector, pass the ball at a very nice rate for a big man, but also has great touch around the rim too. Hartenstein makes a ton of sense for me. If you have four guys that can stretch the floor and then you have Hartenstein, that's perfectly fine. Right. We just saw that with the New York Knicks, and it translated to winning basketball when they were healthy. So I have no concerns over that. It makes too much sense to me. They do have the money to pay him. Seeing that it's unlikely that the Knicks are going to retain him, that stings for the idea of how much chemistry they had last year, how great he was. To me, if I'm the Knicks, it's an easy move. trade Mitchell Robinson, keep Isaiah Hartenstein at any cost, because you saw how great he was for the Knicks in that postseason.
Yeah, Hartenstein was phenomenal this last year. 96 percentiles rim protector coming off the bench. Opponent shot 7% worse at the rim.
He was
when he was
amazing.
defending within 4 feet, percolating the glass. And then, as you highlighted before, one of the best passing bigs as well. And per 36, he's averaging 12 rebounds a game. You get him in a place like Oklahoma City, doesn't have to start, doesn't have to close. It would be a matchup-oriented thing. Some series he would, some series he won't. But this is somebody for the Knicks you're really going to miss out on losing him, because a guy like Mitchell Robinson's had a lot of injury issues over the last couple of years. So having two bigs was really a luxury. Now they have to look to find a replacement for Hartenstein. It's going to kind of diminish the bright spot that he was the entire year coming off their bench and starting in the second half.
It's a perfect fit for the Thunder. This is a guy that no ego. He's going to come in. He doesn't need to score 20 points a night. He's going to rebound. He's going to screen. He's a good passer. He fits OKC perfectly. I think the other end of that, though, is what do the Knicks do? Because you cannot go into next season with Mitchell Robinson as your only big man under contract.
Too unreliable.
When he's healthy, one of the best rebounders in the NBA.
Great defender.
Unfortunately, great defender as well. Unfortunately, he just has not been able to stay healthy. And as stacked as this Knicks roster is, we have the roster up on the screen: Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Mikal Bridges, OG, Julius Randle. Then off the bench, you got Josh Hart, McBride.
Look out.
This team is stacked, but you do have a lot of
He's
guards.
scared.
You got a lot of wings. That big, though, is concerning because you could have the great POA defenders. You could have guys that could guard wings and guards, and you could do all this switching and all of this stuff. But we were talking just about this before we went live. You're going to have to guard Kristaps Porzingis potentially. That's a dude that's 7'3". That's a dude that if you cannot switch on to him, you could have these great defenders, but you're going to need at least one big that could put some physicality there, that could at least get a hand up and be at his elbow at a minimum. Because right now, if you just have Mitchell Robinson out there, that's going to be a mismatch they'll be able
Mitchell
to exploit.
Robinson to lock up.
Lock-up's insane.
If he's healthy, he will not lock him up. He will not. Kristaps Porzingis is going to stretch the floor, and it's going to be very difficult for that for the Knicks to adjust to that. Kristaps Porzingis is a matchup nightmare for any offense. That's for any defense. That's 100% truth. But the Knicks' current problem right now, and it's a good problem to have, is that you have Julius Randle on your roster. Julius Randle is a two-time All-NBA player. He got injured down the stretch for the Knicks, and they still were a game away from the Eastern Conference Finals. I know I've been very vocal on this. Maybe I'm in the minority on this. I believe you trade Julius Randle to free up some cap space, and you bring back Isaiah Hartenstein. Isaiah Hartenstein was so essential to the success for the New York Knicks down the stretch and for the entirety of the regular season. You were able to play a lot of winning basketball while Julius Randle had the shoulder injury, while OG Anunoby was on the court. You only lost 3 games. Now you bring in Mikal Bridges. What have we been talking about essentially this entire time we've been here? How essential wing depth is. You have arguably the best defensive wings in basketball together. I'll respect, of course, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But that's the answer to stop those two guys, Mikal and OG. No.
Say something silly, please.
Joel, come on. We're here, but let's not push it.
What I do?
Come on. We know you. Julius Randle is a piece that I would move. Because he's making a good amount of money, I would move him to bring back Isaiah Hartenstein, because we've already seen we don't need Julius Randle to play winning basketball when it matters most in the playoffs.
Someone who's potentially being moved and shopped is Ben Simmons with the Nets. Did you see his 2K rating? It dropped
68?
drastically. Yes.
68 is crazy.
68?
I think that's what I saw.
Ben.
I think we got a tweet up to show, but Ben Simmons is being shopped. The Nets are taking offers for Ben Simmons.
I bet they are. Well, I bet they are.
Are they going to give picks away for...
The Bulls are taking offers with Zach LaVine, too.
Hey, Zach LaVine, I wouldn't say no to him. I would not say no to Zach LaVine. However...
What would you say about Ben Simmons going to the Celtics?
we don't have money. We can't take that on.
That's not terrible.
We don't have money.
The issue with
As a
Ben
10th
Simmons
man.
is that he's not healthy. We saw this season when he was healthy, it was not bad.
The only way you get Ben Simmons is if you trade someone in the starting lineup first.
Does Ben Simmons want to play basketball?
It's a good question.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Is there any team? So we just got to think about teams that have cap space right now. Ben Simmons is still a younger player, showed all NBA potential, all NBA defense
He was
potential.
supposed to be LeBron.
But the teams that have cap space that realistically could trade for him, Philadelphia, I don't think that's going to happen. No. Detroit, Orlando, Utah, OKC, the Spurs, Charlotte, Houston. Houston doesn't even have money. Spurs is interesting. I mean, these are all teams that it's going to be very difficult to see a role for him. Again, Ben Simmons, I don't think, with all due respect, has earned himself a role on any NBA team. He has to prove that he could stay healthy for longer than a month or two in the NBA season so he could actually, have some sort of impact. But it's unlikely the Nets are getting anything for Ben Simmons. It is more likely the Nets are going to have to attach draft capital to get off his contract. I believe he only has one more year remaining.
Yeah,
so he has 1 more year remaining on his contract.
Yeah.
That makes it more movable. But if I'm the Nets, we could talk about Ben Simmons all day. But I'm looking to move Cam Johnson. I'm looking to move DFS. There's other guys that actually have trade value on this team.
Yeah.
I could get some draft picks back, and we could actually get this rebuild so we could be the worst team in the NBA next season. Ben Simmons is like, if we can move off him, that's great, but it's going to be very difficult to find a trade partner.
I wouldn't trade Ben Simmons for an office space. You could use an office space for like an analytics guy in an organization, maybe, jack up some more threes. Ben Simmons is at this point in time, it's harsh to say, but he's worthless in the trade market.
He is.
A team will not trade a second-round pick for him, and that's the lowest you can go for a guy like him. We just seen Rob Dillingham get traded for like a 7th grader with the Timberwolves and Spurs trade. No team would even do that for Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is just it's unfortunate how far he's fallen off, but he doesn't look at the basket. He's not the same defender. He doesn't have the same activity. And your question that you pose is really the biggest concern with him amongst all of this. It's not even the injury concerns. It's, does he even want to play basketball? Right. And when I look at Ben Simmons and the times that I've watched him this year, I've come away from that question saying, no, he does not want to play.
It's really disheartening to see because Ben Simmons early in his career was an extremely exciting player. He's simply not that anymore. You mentioned it. He's really not looking to attack. He's not looking to get his own. He's looking to facilitate, pass. The defense isn't the same. I think the back definitely has taken a toll on in that regard, but he's still a very good connector, very good rebounder, can push the tempo of an offense. It's just a matter of him not being aggressive, not only scoring the basketball, but his drive to want to be great and be on the basketball court. That's at least how it's come across.
Right.
But I still think that when he is on the court, he is not a negative. He's not a negative asset. When he is on the basketball court, he is useful to a team, but we rarely see him on the court nowadays.
And you need to have a really good foundation for him to be a positive.
Right.
Because offensively, there's just not much he's doing outside of being a playmaker.
You know who would really benefit from him? Phoenix. Phoenix needs someone that can run the show.
Again, they don't have
you
money
get some
to
rebounding,
really
of course. And that's really another unfortunate part to why we may not see Ben Simmons play meaningful basketball for at least another year. He's going to have to get bought out, and then a team really can make a move. But then they're
second A for team that can't get buyout players either.
Yeah, exactly.
That new rule stinks.
Yeah.
That new rule stinks.
I could see him getting bought out this year.
Yeah, that's definitely in the realm of possibility.
It's tough because what once made Ben Simmons so special is the fact he was one of the fastest players in the league at 6'10". And watching the last 2 years in Brooklyn, partially from the herniated disc, the back injuries, the back issues he had, dating back to 2020 in Philadelphia, is that the explosiveness is completely gone. So he feels like a broken player. And you said before he was worthless in the trade market. A lot of the time, in many situations, he would be a completely useless player on the offense side of the ball because a guy who's not looking to drive, a guy who's not looking to score, a guy who's not going to be spacing the floor is really going to be pigeonholed into this DHO type of option, but he's not looking to roll to the rim either. So it's like, what does Ben Simmons really bring to the table for us? For a lot of these teams, it's frankly nothing if he's going to play 12, 15 games a year.
Yeah, and it's hard because I think defensively there's still something there to be unlocked or brought back with Ben Simmons' game, but offensively it's very difficult for him to find a role. I mean, the Nets were one of the worst teams in the NBA last season. Maybe record didn't show it, but the Nets were one of the worst teams in the NBA last season, and there still wasn't really a role for him there. And that's when you kind of had some space in with McHale and Cam Johnson and Cam Thomas at times, so there was DFS. At least something there DFS offensively, but it's really difficult because ideally, like, what's Ben Simmons? A small ball 5? You know, you can't really play him again with other centers there, that especially since most can't shoot, especially if Nick Claxton you signed to a $100 million contract. It's very difficult to find a market for someone where it's like, he's a small ball 5, but then offensively, he kind of needs to be the point guard because he can't do anything off ball. And defensively, he can be great, but he's not always on the court. So there's just not many teams that even want to take the chance, like Detroit, for example. They need talent desperately. but you already have no spacing on that team. And you already have Cade there who's going to be running the point guard. So it doesn't make sense for them. Utah, there was rumors out there that saying maybe they're a kind of a sneaky team to go get Paul George. So it seems like they're more looking to get pieces to win now rather than try to find this project. And Ben Simmons is at an age that he's now 22 years old, where like there's years in front of him that he could get better. He's 27.
He's still young.
He's 27 though.
That's
like
2 years older than us. That's not that
Drew,
bad.
Name a 27-year-old that is a project in the NBA.
No, there's not many.
It just
There's
doesn't
not many.
exist.
There's
You know
really
what?
not.
I think Utah would be a great fit because if there's any place where Ben Simmons can somewhat be fixed, it's in a free-flowing
shit hurts me.
offense with a lot of shooting and a great young coach who can amplify what he does do well. And I feel like Will Hardy's always done a fantastic job at maximizing a player's skill set, whether it was Colin Sexton coming off the 20 minutes against Lauri Markkanen. So if he's going to go anywhere to be saved, it'll probably be the Utah Jazz to me.
If Ben Simmons is 27, he's pushing 30.
Yeah.
You're pushing 30.
That's right.
Now he's getting unk.
Is that not facts?
He's getting unk status.
He's pushing 30.
I'm crying.
I already feel like an unk. I'm 25.
Nah, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. I'll tell you what. Is Ben Simmons... Is this the most unique fall off we've seen from a player ever? Maybe I'm allowing the moment to cloud my judgment, but when have we seen a player go from all NBA? I guess Bynum comes to mind. That's another one. He was playing at very high level.
Russ.
But Russ was great for years.
True.
Years.
Yeah.
Almost a decade of being great.
And you could understand because it was like a bad fit. He was on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah,
With Simmons, he was
that's true.
24.
Ben was in the early prime of his career. He was an all NBA player, multiple time All-Star. He had a huge ceiling.
Injuries and confidence.
DK injuries. Not really. It was confidence. That Atlanta series took his heart.
I think another player that comes to mind when talking about fall offs, I think Darren Williams is one of them. When he got traded from Utah to the Nets, with the Nets, he failed miserably there.
Yeah,
and then he went to Dallas, and in Dallas, he was a complete shell of himself. Roy Hibbert comes to mind too.
Okay,
he fell off out of nowhere. Kenneth Faried comes to mind,
but no one was like Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons
His
was
highs was higher. Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to say face
Darren
of the league
Williams.
because that's strong, but he was one of the most
an NBA
exciting young players in the game so early into his career.
Yeah. No, I think Ben Simmons had the biggest fall off ever.
Yes.
Because at least like with the other guys I mentioned, like Darren Williams, it happened gradually and then it kind of happened all the way.
Correct.
With Kenneth Faried, the league kind of shifted to a different style. Roy Hibbert, same thing. With Ben Simmons, it really was a confidence and you can say injury kind of thing. But we don't really know how much the injury did affect him. I'm not going to say it didn't affect him at all. I think that would be naive to say. But when I watch him play, it really doesn't feel like there's any assertiveness there to compete at all.
So
No, you're good.
I was going to say, Ben Simmons, we've discussed a lot. I think we've given Ben Simmons more than enough airtime. There is a player out there who was just on the Los Angeles Lakers. Would you want Taurean Prince to return?
I would not say no. Taurean Prince was an awesome floor spacer for us. I know that a lot of jokes are made between Darvin Ham and Taurean Prince, but Taurean Prince was a positive for the Los Angeles Lakers. One of the few that consistently shot the three ball
Almost
very
40%.
well for the Los Angeles Lakers. Not a bad defender. Can be a little bit better, but as a 3-and-D player, Taurean Prince for that level of contract, he is a very firm role player that he can go to a contender and definitely have an impact on.
2023 in-season tournament champion. Can't forget that.
You cannot forget that. Honestly, they don't talk about how the Lakers and Celtics both are celebrating their 18th championship.
Oh my God, have some respect.
Sorry.
What do you think about Taurean Prince, John?
I think he's a really good second piece to come off the bench because Darvin Ham last year kind of was playing him more than he should be. There's limitation there, but for a team that needs a lot of spacing, a lot of shot making, they should retain Prince. And he's also only going to cost about $4 to $6 million a year for 2 years. I think that's someone they absolutely should look to retain.
For a team that needs wings as well, you know, like outside of Rui and LeBron, there's not much there. You know, Christian Wood could kind of play the four, but Taurean Prince is one of the few players that actually shot well for the Lakers last season. You know, almost 40%. I think Darvin Ham overplayed him at times. I think there was definitely moments that you saw maybe Taurean Prince should get his minutes reduced by a little bit, but he was a Darvin Ham guy. Darvin Ham loved him, and it is per Mike A. Scotto, or that's pronounced Mike A. Scotto. They're interested in re-signing Taurean Prince. it's not going to be a huge deal. You're going to need depth in the NBA. I think ideally he's a guy that could be your 6 or 7 man coming off the bench. And if he's able to repeat the season where he's shooting nearly 40%, it's a guy that's been able to shoot around 40, like 37 to 40% for multiple seasons. He's not a bad defender by any means. He's not elite, but he's not a bad defender. This is a guy that the Lakers need to bring back.
It's funny. I really think about the Lakers shooting last season. We weren't a bad shooting team.
You made a good amount.
We just didn't take enough of them.
You're top 10 in 3-point percentage.
D'Angelo Russell broke the franchise record for most 3-pointers made in the season. I know you guys are tired of hearing me say it, but that's the truth. Austin Reeves shot around 37% from 3. Mm-hmm. LeBron James shot a career high from 3-point percentage. Taurean Prince was a great 3-point shooter. Rui Hachimura was a solid 3-point shooter. The issue is that Anthony Davis is not a floor spacer at this point in time. He takes the mid-range shot and is pretty efficient in that regard. Just when it comes to being behind that arc, it just doesn't fall for him.
Right. And I think that's fine because one thing that I can envision for J.J. Redick is trying to run his offense through Anthony Davis more.
He said that in the press conference.
He did. In a way that the Kings have kind of maximized Domantas Sabonis, who also can't space the floor. So if the Lakers are going to stockpile a lot of shooters in here, they just add in Dalton Connect. I think Rui Hachimura will benefit from the J.J. Redick hire more than almost anyone else as well. And I think you look at the abundance of 3-point shooting in there. It's okay if AD is going to take 1 3-point.
We're going to have AD take up the ball and all that. We're about to have AD run the show.
That's a way to get around the not spacing issue, but his lack of 3-pointers. If you have the ball in his hands, it's not a big of a deal.
You have to double him in the post. He's that dominant. Yeah. With Anthony Davis. We saw
that against the Nuggets. They did a good job.
Yeah, with Anthony Davis, I feel like the Lakers would have beat the Nuggets even last year if he was used more in the second half. He was the best player in that series. If he was used correctly.
If he was used correctly.
Good statement. Jokic was crazy.
Jokic, every single
He was outplaying Jokic in the first half.
In the first half, agreed. But let me give credit to the Nuggets. They did an excellent job of taking him out of the game, throwing 2, 3 bodies on him at times in the closing moments of these games and forcing the other Los Angeles Lakers to beat him, which is why we saw LeBron James have such a high usage in these fourth quarters. Because they said, listen, we're going to live and die by this. Anthony Davis was doing whatever he wanted against them. If you have both him and LeBron James going off, that's a recipe to lose a game.
Jokic can't guard him.
You take AD out of a game and it's just LeBron James, that's when you need your secondary guy. He can't. Who'd you say?
Jokic can't guard him.
He could not guard him. That's a fact.
Not at all.
It's funny statement.
I'm fine with it. I'm actually, that's you cook like a beautiful meal. You need the supporting cast to do their job, and the Lakers last year, they didn't do that. We saw Rui go ghost, truthfully. We saw D'Lo have bad lows, had some good moments, but for a majority wasn't that great. And then Austin Reeves was so focused on defense that on the offensive side, he was fatigued, and a lot of his shots were missing short.
We got a Warriors tweet to look at next. Our producers are going to put it up on the screen shortly.
Big season for the Warriors. This is Steph Curry. You only got a couple seasons left.
He's going out like Kobe, man.
To really use Steph.
I think that we're going to see those last years similar to how Kobe Bryant was on the Los Angeles Lakers. I just don't know how you can salvage this current situation with the Golden State Warriors. With Paul George opting out of their contract, essentially removes them completely from getting him. At least that's how I feel. But let's read this real quick.
The Warriors are shopping Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins in trade talks.
They know. You have to shake up this roster somehow. The tough part about them is they only have 2 unprotected firsts they can trade. Every other pick has to be a swap, and swaps are still valuable, right? Teams are still going to value swaps in potential trades, but we saw Mikal Bridges go mostly because you had 4 unprotected first-round picks to go for. You saw KD and James Harden, all these teams, multiple unprotected first-round picks were available, and right now, Andrew Wiggins has shown potential. A couple years ago in the finals, he was arguably the second most important player on that team. But you're coming off a really rough year for Andrew Wiggins. A really rough year. He's had some personal issues. He's had some injuries. But on both sides of the ball, he's just not been that same player. And Chris Paul's a guy that I think had some really nice moments in Golden State, especially when Steph Curry went to the bench in that first half or maybe majority of the season, where Steph Curry, when he came off the court, they actually weren't a complete negative. Like Chris Paul was able to run some offense for them. So there is some little amount of trade value there, although he's getting paid $30 million. But it's difficult to look at this Golden State roster. Under contract, you got Curry, Wiggins, Draymond, Trace Jackson Davis, Chris Paul, Gary Payton, Kuminga, and AirPods. You got some talent there, and they tried to go and make a home run move to get Paul George. The Clippers didn't want to accept the offer, which involved a bunch of their young guys. It's just really difficult to find a trade, and I was trying to find trades for Lauri Markkanen yesterday. that puts the Warriors in actual contention in the Western Conference.
It's tough.
Go ahead, Johnny.
'Cause I really feel like no move, like you just said, anyone would really swing the Warriors championship equity to being a top 3 team in the state of the Western Conference. All the teams at the top right now are teams that are continuing to get better and better, and they're developing a lot of their players. You look at Golden State's roster, the only guys under 26 years old that are going to be here long term, we think, because they're just shopping 2 of them around in this potential PG trade, are Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga. And so it feels like for Golden State, all of the players that are trying to build a championship team around are going to just continue to regress more and more. Draymond defensively, can't he be the defensive linchpin he was 3 years ago?
I'm going to say yes.
So.
I'm going to say yes.
We don't
he
really
has
know.
shown no signs of slowing down defensively.
He has shown a little bit.
Was it though?
It's not. He's not falling off by any stretch, but
Still
I
a
think
defense
we're
player of the year
slowly.
candidate.
I think we're slowly starting to see he's not going to be
still
a
a top
one-man
5
defense.
I was going to say, honestly, I still feel like that's the statement to make. He's still the defensive anchor for them. He's still initiating offense. He's still one of the lead playmakers for them. Defensively, I don't see any sign of slowing down. We see him when he's on the court for them. The Golden State Warriors are drastically better, not just offensively, but more importantly, defensively.
To talk about this tweet,
Yeah.
Chris Paul can't be shopped. Nobody will trade for him with the guaranteed money that he has on his deal.
I'm with you.
Unless he agrees to take less. But I think the best case scenario is that he wants to just be a free agent and go wherever he wants. Andrew Wiggins is the only one that has value, but he has
what's that value for
a
him?
lot of money on his contract still.
Appeal.
The Warriors, I will say this about them. They are having a terrible offseason, and it's only made worse because Klay Thompson was just reported by Yahoo that he's willing to take a discount, a mid-level exception for the Lakers or the Clippers, which means
he's really gonna be
he
a
is
Laker.
so disrespected by the Warriors that he's willing to take a discount for those other teams, but not the team that he helped build a dynasty with. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Because if you're leaving the Warriors because of whatever money offer they offered you, you felt like it was disrespectful, to go and then take a similar offer for another team instead of the team that has drafted you and has been by you throughout everything, I think it's a little bit of a bitter move by Klay.
Can I also add, maybe that's Klay admitting the writings on the wall with the Golden State Warriors, that their better days of playing basketball are gone. He needs to move on and go to a situation where he thinks he has a better chance to win now. And also where there is maybe a certain level of disrespect with the money and how the front office handled this situation. Maybe there's also a side of him that believes my best bet of winning is not right now with the Golden State Warriors.
Right.
This past season, we were a play-in team. And we were, let me not say healthy, because of course we understand like Draymond Green did miss a ton of games, not just because of injury, but mostly because of antics on the court. The Golden State Warriors simply are not a true, legitimate contender. And that's hard to say when you have Steph Curry on your team, a top 10 player in the world at the absolute floor, and Draymond Green, who's still, in my opinion, a top 30, top 35 player in the game because of his impact on the defensive side of the ball, because of his ability to play make. They didn't talk about how he improved as a three-point shooter this season also. The rest of the surrounding parts simply are just not up to the level of competing for a championship.
I've got a huge Draymond Green stat. This was the first year in Draymond's career that opponents shot better at the rim when he was defending them. In past years, he's been 80 to 95%.
He just had to show that Draymond
Yeah.
Green fell off.
Yeah.
I respect it,
No,
John.
I'm
Well
not-
done.
That's not my point, but we are seeing Draymond slowly decline the defensive end with his age. This last year, opponents shot 4.5% better within 4 feet. That's 12th percentile for rim protectors. It's pretty bad. And past years, he's always been 81st to 95th, dating back to his first defensive player of the year, all the way back in 2016. He's not the same defensive player he was back then, and I think in these next couple of years, we're going to see him continue to decline with age. It's hard to expect him to be the same exact guy on that end.
We got a Paul George report tweet to pull up on the stream. It's about to be pulled out by the producers to talk about this Golden State thing. Well, we got the tweet up right now. Drew, can you read it? You're closer.
You got it. Report. The Sixers' plan B is to trade for Brandon Ingram if they fail to sign Paul George. One potential contingency plan that has been bantered around the league if the Sixers fail to land Paul George is Pelican forward Brandon Ingram via trade. Shout out to Mike A. Scotto.
What does that deal look like? Because the Pelicans just trade for DeJounte Murray. What they need is a big. And there's not really much on the Golden State's roster that's going to help that.
No,
At least
this
to be
is Sixers.
Oh, my apologies.
You're good.
My apologies.
The Sixers plan B is to trade for Brandon Ingram.
They got even less players.
So they have no players. This would be draft picks. This is straight draft picks. The Sixers have a ton of draft picks. They could take on Brandon Ingram's full contract because they have $60 million in cap space. Jared McCain, yeah. Ooh. That's tough because if the Pelicans want to move off Brandon Ingram right now, again, they need a big. And I don't know if their plan is to trade for draft picks and then hope maybe at the trade deadline we could flip those draft picks and get a big.
If I had to assume, this is a 3-team trade. Maybe they bring in the Cleveland Cavaliers also into the mix where maybe now the Pelicans can go and get their big and maybe a Jared Allen. You bring Brandon Ingram over to the 76ers, but the Cleveland Cavaliers can't get nothing. Maybe they get a bunch of assets from the Pelicans, whether that be a bunch of draft picks, if they trade young players, don't know, maybe potentially, which would be a bit much. You're already trading Brandon Ingram. If they want to trade one of their younger guys, maybe a Maxey is included in the deal. I don't know if it's really essential also that the Pelicans go and get another big because they did just draft the Maxey. Yes, young. Yes,
you ready for him to start day one? Because they don't know they're big.
I don't know if it's the craziest thing I ever heard, but at the same time, you would like something a little bit more for sure. And Jared Allen last year was arguably the best he's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, Jared Allen is the perfect fit for the Pelicans, and that was the rumored trade for a while now, is Brandon Ingram for Jared Allen or something along those lines. So when they acquired DeJounte Murray, didn't give up really anything. They gave up Dyson Daniels and some draft picks, but at least like their actual core that's getting significant minutes because the roster right now, a Pelicans roster, it's kind of like a lesser version of the Knicks because they have DeJounte, they have Brandon Ingram, Zion, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. Great. I think I would take the Knicks core over the Pelicans core, what we got right now.
Herb Jones with all due respect. A potential DPOY level player.
He's not Mikal.
On defense?
Even on defense, Mikal best was second in defense player.
I'm taking Herb 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And I respect
he was
Mikal.
Just
Mikal's way better than him, though.
On offense, for sure.
No, he's just a way better player.
God,
Herb is, a top 2 or 3.
What do you mean why he's a way better player? Because he can average 20 and defend at an elite level.
But it's like
where Herb can just defend at an elite level and not give you none of that.
It's an empty 20.
No, it's not an empty 20. He averaged 17 in Phoenix.
On Brooklyn, it was an empty.
Oh,
for sure. When he was a DPOY level player, yeah, but he was averaging what, 16?
Mikal is a way better player than Herb Jones.
You're telling me the Pelicans is not a lesser version of the Knicks? With all due respect to Trey Murphy, to Herb Jones, to Zion, all those guys.
I don't know, man. I just saw the Pelicans
Jalen Brunson or Zion.
You go Brunson.
Trey Murphy or Josh Hart. I'm going with Josh Hart.
Oof. We have other names to get for, brother. We have other names to get
my
through.
boy.
We got other names to get
Please respect him.
Trey Murphy is nice. Herb Jones is nice. CJ McCollum is very good. I think at this point he's a great three-point shooter, but we saw him last year against the Lakers go ghost. That was tough to see. Of course, Zion Williamson, we know at his best, he is still one of the best players in this league. I do firmly believe that.
He's not
It's just
Brunson.
a matter of being healthy. It's hard to be Brunson. I'll be honest. It's really hard to be. Brunson, he's one of the ones. He does. Zion does. He does. From generational to underrated, man. That's just the sad truth. They got to start putting respect on Zion's name. I just looked at how well the Pelicans played last year in that second half of the season, particularly after the All-Star break. Defensively, we were talking about one of the best teams in basketball, and offensively as well. It was clicking on all cylinders until B.I. got hurt. I just think that lesser version of the Knicks, I think now, understanding that Mikal is now added to this team, you do have OG. As long as, if you're going to say, and when it comes to injury with Zion, you have to also pair that with OG Anunoby.
Yeah, but Zion, OG's not their one.
He's so much better.
Yeah, but also B.I. went down.
For sure.
If Zion was one of them ones, he would have kept the Pelicans afloat in that Western Conference.
He gave them 40. He gave the Lakers 40. He tried everything he could until his hamstring gave out on him.
I'm saying they should have kept the 5 seed. If Zion is one of them ones.
It was like a game difference between the 5 and 7 seed.
You got to win one of them games. He didn't. What are you talking about?
Jalen
Brunson would have won one of the games.
I don't know, man. We just had this whole conversation.
Julius Randle would have won one of the games. Julius Randle's been a 5th seed before.
I don't know.
He's led it to before.
Would have been nice to have that game 3. One of them
Julius Randle, Zion, look at the numbers. Tell me who's better.
Zion clears.
Look at the numbers.
Real quick, to get back to the Sixers and the B.I. thing. I think what the Sixers are showing us is they want that third star more than anything.
Terribly.
We could talk about the KCP, and who knows? Maybe what's Brandon Ingram making? How much? 30?
So much for Daryl Morey doing the right thing. Apparently, he's all in on this third star.
Yeah, because again, they don't have players to trade out, which means you would have to absorb basically all of Brandon Ingram's contract. So if it is 30 to 35 million, now you have around 20 to 25 million dollars in cap space. So maybe there's still a world you could go out there and get KCP and still fit under that cap.
Right.
But then again, that's a really good roster of 4 great players, but now it's all of that minimum type
But
guys.
here's an interesting tidbit about Brandon Ingram. This is the last year of his contract.
36 mil.
Until he's an unrestricted free agent.
They would have his bird rights next year, though, if they trade for him.
Yeah, there's a chance, though, Darren Moore could get him for not that much, though.
No.
Because he's an expiring player. Nobody's going to trade a lot for an expiring player. Morey could get him with maybe 2 firsts. You know, Brandon Ingram, it depends on how badly the Pelicans want to move off of him. But I think at this point in time, you want Herb Jones to start.
To trade 2 firsts, it makes sense for the Sixers. If I'm the Pelicans, to only get 2 firsts for Brandon Ingram and not find a firm replacement for him in my front court.
What if I threw in Jared McCain?
Well, you have Trey Murphy and you have Herb
No,
Jones.
I'm saying the front court, as in I need a big. I need a big.
Yeah, the
But that's not
Sixers
the role that he plays, though.
All right, I used the word replace, but you're
add,
yes,
fill in.
correct. Because you already know who I want to fill my 2-3. I
No,
want it
yeah.
to be Trey, and I want it to be Herb.
I agree with you, but that becomes easier for the Pelicans to do if they're not worried about $37 million.
But who's the big? Who am I getting?
Oh, they could maybe free agent. You got to sign somebody, maybe.
There's just no available. I guess
There are
we
some.
prolong it. This
Maybe go
this
to
one.
Patadze.
That's my guy.
You can maybe Pelicans are the one to throw the bag at Isaiah. If that were to
They
be
could
the
be
case,
in the running, but yeah, you know, if they free up that money from BI, they'll be able to be in the running for one of these bigs.
Now I'm a little bit more open minded to that. That's fair. If they were to be aggressive and trying
Pelicans
to
right
bring
now
in
are
IH.
$62 million over the cap.
Yeah, no, Brandon Ingram's contract alone is not going to fix that.
No, that you get 35 off the books, still 35
All right,
over.
I'm back to my very firm stance. I need a big.
It kind of would need to trade not DeJounte,
CJ?
BI and CJ.
Yeah, but even still, now you have like $1 million in cap space.
If I'm the Pelicans, I want to hold on to CJ. He was
It
a
depends.
great 3-point shooter
That
last
cap
year.
space is always weird because it doesn't take into account.
Your own free agents that you could renounce.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's true because they did just bring in DeJounte.
Because
obviously
Jonas
CJ.
is probably included in that, but
True.
who knows how much would be off his books. It's a hefty process, but you know, freeing up $37 million will be good.
But-
we talked about a lot of free agents. What do you want?
No,
mention
go
else?
ahead.
Tobias Harris is one that we haven't mentioned yet. I think Bleacher Report on the stream, they've done a wonderful job of putting the free agents on the screen for us, and we've mentioned almost everybody. Tobias Harris was one of those names. Where do you think he ends up going?
He's a Piston. I don't know another world where he goes to. He's a Detroit Piston. Tobias doesn't really have. I don't know what his market is. I don't think it's a huge market for Tobias Harris. Detroit's been rumored for years, kind of ever since Tobias is, kind of fallen off. But most recently, this last playoff performance, what Tobias showed you is he just can't be on a contending team, with all due respect. At least he can't be someone that is relied upon. If he's like your 6th, 7th, 8th man off the bench and he comes in, gives you 10, 15 minutes, that's fine. And the numbers look decent, 16-6, 48% shooting. I think he's a Detroit Piston, or at least one of these, bottom-ish teams that are kind of rebuilding, that have cap space, that need to spend the cap space more than anything. Because we saw last season with Houston, they had a ton of money that they had to spend. They went and gave Fred $40 a year. Tobias in a similar situation where Detroit has an insane amount of money that there's a minimum amount you have to spend in the NBA. Tobias is one of those dudes that you could sign for $20 million a year if you're Detroit, even if it's for 1 or 2 years, get him under your books, and he could be a vet. He could give you some production, because similar how we were just talking about who were just talking about going to Detroit potentially, and DeMar DeRozan. We're talking about DeMar going to Detroit. Does he have the perfect fit with a lot of teams? No, but he's someone that at least gives you talent. He could shoot the 3 a little bit for Detroit too. That's where I think he would go.
Does the Spurs intrigue you at all?
No.
You go and you bring a little bit extra wing depth. You get some veteranship next to Victor Wembanyama. To me, it makes a little bit more sense too. They need some 3-point shooting. He does provide that. You don't. John, if you're going into it with the idea
a lot of wing depth.
It's Keldon.
They have
It's
Keldon.
I guess if
Shohan
we're going to
starting,
count
they have
Shohan, Vassell is not a wing.
He's a 2-3.
Vassell is probably going to be on ball 1 or the 2. And then you have Stephon Castle there. To me, if you bring in another vet in a Tobias Harris, you can stretch out the floor a little bit. He can give you some offense, but mostly you can go and help clean up that defense too, because that seems to be the direction that the Spurs are trying to go towards. I think that it also does make sense. They do have cap, and with the money that Tobias is probably going to ask for, I hope it doesn't exceed more than 25. Like, that's the absolute most that I'd be willing to give Tobias. I feel like that avenue does make sense where he can go to a team, help out a young developing team, but that at least has potential, not fully tank the rest of your career by going to Detroit. To me, that's where it becomes difficult. If I'm a free agent, I'm staying far away from Detroit unless all I care about is securing a bag. There are players where it does make sense where, hey, I just need my money. You know, they can offer me a lot and I can play my years here and just stack on my bread. But if I want to go and make an impact, I'd rather go to any other team than Detroit.
That's valid. I guess with Tobias Harris, his market's kind of dry after this last playoff run. He was someone that was kind of played off the floor almost for Philadelphia. He is a good teammate. He's someone that a lot of his teammates like, and I think in the locker room, he's someone that could be valuable for a younger team that's trying to find a veteran mentor.
Yeah.
So maybe San Antonio is a team that would be interested. I always looked at Tobias like a guy who's kind of like he's an empty stats guy, like a kind of an innings eater. After he was traded to Philadelphia, following his career year, or his career half of a season with the Clippers, really, I don't think he's a very valuable archetype of a player. But I think one opportunity like Detroit where he can come off the bench and just be that, not table setter, but that shot creator that gives you a little bit more juice, that would be where he's really best fit. And honestly, that's not like a 25 to 31 team. He really does not serve a purpose to me on a playoff team today.
I was going to say, because we were just talking about it earlier, I'm trying to pull up where I have the teams that have MLE. Like any of these potential contending teams, OKC I don't really see, Dallas I don't really see, Orlando, probably not.
Don't hate that.
But he does bring some shooting potentially off the bench as a guy. Pacers, probably not. They have so many. They just have so much depth. The Kings kind of need some talent, and he could be a decent fit there.
So before we talk about Tobias Harris a little bit more, we got a breaking news Paul George tweet that just came out.
What do we got?
They're going to put it on the screen. Drew, can you read that?
Oh, Lord. The 76ers have explored the possibility of adding Paul George and KCP in free agency. This is what I'm talking about.
That's the best case scenario for them.
This is a home run offseason if that's the case.
They would beat Boston.
What are we looking?
If healthy.
I'm not saying that actually.
You're insane.
What is the Tyrese Maxey contract looking like? Is he still going to get the $50 million?
Yeah. Tyrese Maxey is not taking anything.
Tyrese Maxey wouldn't take away anything from the cap space that they have right now.
Really?
No, he wouldn't.
Because he's still under contract for next season.
True.
So it wouldn't hit it till the the next 2026 season, I guess.
That's a fact.
But if they do this, I mean, you got Maxey, KCP, Paul George. You got your two defenders. You got Embiid. You need to find a starting forward, but they could do that. I mean, Porzingis would get cooked by
PG.
Embiid,
if they're beating the Celtics, that means they wash the Knicks.
Okay.
If you were ready to admit that,
I'll take that.
I said anyway the Celtics lose.
PG low-key can play the 4. Honestly, he can play the 4 at this point in his career.
He could. But either way, you still have like a hole in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that.
Whatever starting spot.
Because then you put that 3 you do need to solidify. And honestly,
Najee Marshall.
Najee's not a bad one.
Too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a very low
Does
market
Tobias
value.
sign a very team-friendly contract and
Would you
decide
rather
to come back?
Tobias or Nick Batum? I'd rather Nick Batum.
You love Nick Batum.
I know, this is like the 8th time he said his name.
He was just there.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is with this is that
in that playoff
He
series.
was pretty good.
in order for the
no-dip
Sixers
shots are always gas.
to get KCP and Paul George would have to take a pay cut.
You think?
I don't know. They have $60 million in cap space.
They have so much.
60 mil.
58, yeah.
Yeah, they're number one most
So
cap.
KCP, I'm thinking he's getting at least 20 mil.
I agree.
So that means Paul George, he's getting 38 mil.
He might get more
What did he
years
just
attached.
decline? 47?
He's definitely vying for 40 to 45 mil in the open
Because the
market.
Clippers weren't giving him that 4th year, they didn't give it to Kawhi. So I think maybe PG takes a tiny bit less money, but if they give him the full 4 years, he would be.
Opting out of 47 million is insane.
Yeah, but if you have KCP and Paul George, I mean, Paul George and Tatum, they're right there neck and neck. So Paul George and him, they cancel out. You got KCP, who's a great defender.
Man.
Then you got Joel Embiid, MVP. Listen, Tyrese Maxey, rising star, just made the All-Star game. Oh, that would be a great series.
I'm going to be transparent with you, man. Don't put Paul George and Tatum in the same sense.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Too much?
Way too much.
Was that too much, Dallas?
Way
Who's
too
the
much.
champion?
Oof. No ring?
No Larry?
It always killed me.
No Larry? Damn. But no, it works. Listen, it works. You get Paul George for $40 million. You get KCP. You still have the full MLE because they're not going to be over the first apron or anything. Like they're still going to have that to sign. They could go out and they're going to change their entire roster. I think that's really the only question about Philadelphia going into next season. Assuming they get Paul George and KCP, the roster is better than it was this previous season.
Oh, yeah.
I think without a doubt, adding those two guys, no question about it. It's just you got to go and do it into action with teams that have continuity, like the Boston Celtics, even the Knicks, who are adding Mikal Bridges, but they just showed last year that they're a team that has ECF potential. So that's really the only question, is once you add these huge pieces to the roster, do they fit as seamlessly as we're expecting them
and
to?
Honestly, I don't know what Kelly Oubre's market is right now, but if you can bring back Kelly Oubre.
They don't have his bird rights, though, because I believe he signed a minimum last year.
That's true.
Yeah, so they don't have his bird rights.
I mean, Kelly Oubre played exceptional for them last season.
He did.
So I'm not sure how much money he's going to want in the open market.
Don't they have Buddy Hield's bird rights?
Yes, they do.
If I had to choose between a Buddy Hield and a Kelly Oubre, maybe it's a hot one. I'm going with Kelly.
Now
we have better for them.
I would too.
We have a Derrick Jones Jr. tweet to show. I'm hoping it's not that he's leaving the Dallas Mavericks.
Dude, apparently it's
multiple people within the Dallas Mavericks organization believe Derrick Jones Jr. is a done deal to return.
Bang.
That's great.
I don't want to call out our producers, lovely producers at BR, but there was a more
conflicting
updated,
reports.
There was conflicting reports, yes, that there's a world where, or at least Athletic is reporting that it's not done. It's not a done deal.
Shout out to our dog, MFFL Nation.
Shout out to MFL Nation.
Shout out. He's a legend. He's very optimistic when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks.
Probably didn't report the negative stuff.
No,
right?
correct. Why would you? Respectful dude.
My apologies. That is the most recent report. The Steinline. No, this is also from Marza, but there's also a Steinline report saying there's optimism within the Mavericks organization that even if the Mavs do a sign and trade for Klay Thompson, that changes things because now you're not using them as an MLE.
That's perfect.
This is a sign and trade. You can use the MLE potentially for Derrick Jones Jr.
Oh, that's the thing with the Dallas Mavericks is that in order to sign Klay in free agency, Derrick Jones Jr. got to go.
Yeah.
But if they sign Derrick Jones Jr. and they could trade to the Warriors, maybe Maxey Kleber and somebody else, then you can make the money work. Golden State essentially is about to lose Klay Thompson for nothing. So I think at least if you could bring in like a Maxey Kleber into the organization just to get something back for Klay, it works.
I was going to say, I did see a report saying that the Golden State Warriors would help aid wherever Klay Thompson does want to go to. So at least they're trying to show him that level of respect. But at the same time, now it really becomes intriguing. You get to keep Derrick Jones.
We have another tweet here.
I wouldn't say all that now. Klay Thompson's not moving no needle like that for me.
We have another tweet that I just sent to our producer. If they want to throw it up on the screen. This is from Monte Poole, who covers the Golden State Warriors. The Mavericks are chasing Klay Thompson extremely hard.
Which makes sense.
Whatever that means. They're chasing him extremely hard, trying to pair him up with Luka Doncic and Kyrie.
I'm going to be honest.
It makes sense.
It does, but KCP, I think that he makes more sense to me.
Well, KCP, I don't think he'll take the money they're trying to offer him.
That's true. He's just a better defender at this point in time. Not a better shooter. No way. I will never disrespect Klay Thompson in that regard, but maybe takes smarter shots.
But that's the thing. I feel like if you're the Dallas Mavericks, what held you back in the NBA Finals was that your players couldn't hit open shots. KCP, he is a good shooter, but he did go cold for the Denver Nuggets this past season. We know Klay Thompson has his moments where he's went cold in playoffs too. But between KCP and Klay Thompson, when we talk about shooting, I'm trusting one guy a whole lot more than I'm trusting the other.
I'm 100% with you.
That's what they need. You know, Klay Thompson, he's not the same defender, but I think he's still a good positional defender. And when we talk about the Dallas Mavericks scheme with Luka and Kyrie being a part of a successful defense, a lot of it was funneling players into the rim. And I think Klay Thompson, at least in this stage of his career, can still funnel players into where you want offenses to go into your defense. And I think it's a great fit. If they get Klay Thompson, that's a great move because being the third option next to Kyrie and Luka, shooting 40% from three, he'll get into a rhythm pretty easily.
Now, let me
get both of them.
Let me ask you guys a question too, because we've talked a lot about Dallas and Klay. Is it possible that Klay goes to Denver?
That's been a possibility, but we haven't had any reports of it.
It would have to be a sign and trade. Yeah. Denver doesn't have any money.
Really, even though they're letting KCP walk.
Yeah, I don't
They're
think
committing
they
a
would
lot to
have
that big three.
They wouldn't have they wouldn't have a $12 million MLE. They might have like a $5 million MLE or
taxpayer.
something.
Because I remember reading seeing that KCP can still return to the Nuggets, but the Nuggets are not going to overextend themselves to go out there and top any offer that KCP gets. If KCP gets a deal that he likes and wants, they'll happily let him walk.
The Nuggets don't even have the TP MLE because they already used that recently.
Or they were with who?
I think it would have been Bruce Brown 2 years ago.
Interesting.
But that was also 2 summers ago.
The Nuggets have said that they want sustained success. You know, they're not trying to win like we need to win 2024. It has to be the championship year. They've said that we want to win multiple rings over like a 5-year period. So if you have all of this money, example why Bruce Brown left last season, example why they haven't come to agreement with KCP, it seems unlikely he's going to return to Denver, is that second apron really limits you.
Yeah.
So Denver is kind of taking that approach, saying like, listen, we have a great roster. We know that, Jokic, MPJ, although he was in trade rumors as well, and Jamal Murray is our core. We're not going to go and spend $20 million on Bruce Brown and KCP. Right. We're going to draft guys. We're going to develop them, guys like Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, and hope they could step up and fill those shoes.
Right. The Nuggets used their MLE last year in Reggie Jackson for $5 million. So that
well, they
really
did just get off his contract.
You're right, but you get it every other year.
That's interesting. This new player bargaining agreement really has me all over the place. However, the Nuggets are a very interesting team. I say that with the idea that they have been more than okay with losing players because they do have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. They have one of the best twos in Jamal Murray. They just gave him an over $200 million contract. MPJ is one of the better 3-and-D guys in the league. Aaron Gordon is one of the better role players in the game. The starting lineup is great. It's the depth that I do have my concerns with. And as more and more players do walk in free agency, first Bruce Brown, now a big piece in KCP, I want to respect Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, but I'm having genuine worries about the depth of the Nuggets and if it's going to allow them to have sustained success like they seem to want.
All this signals to me is that Calvin Booth is not the same level of GM as Tim Connolly. Calvin Booth, I think, has made some errors as a Nuggets GM, and I understand that mindset. We want to win for a sustained period of time. This is Jokic's prime. Yep. This is Jamal Murray's prime. You don't take a year off.
You can't.
Every year, you got to try to win a championship when you have this level of talent. They just won once. Maybe they're kind of laid back and kicking their feet a little bit. But we just saw Tim Connolly in Minnesota trade up and go get Rob Dillingham, a top prospect in the NBA draft, because he's being aggressive. Because when you have a window to win, that's what you are. And Denver, losing Bruce Brown last year and now about to lose KCP, those are two detrimental moves.
Right. Calvin Booth's been patient because last year he turned down the opportunity to sign veterans. I believe one of them was Torrey Craig, who they could have brought in, but he chose to instead ride with his current core of Peyton Watson going to his de facto rookie season and Christian Brown. So that's a fair point.
I'll also say this, apologies, and then we'll wrap up real quick. You look at the Nuggets, you understand you do have Jokic and Murray in their primes. You mentioned Minnesota being aggressive. That's what happens when you're desperate to win a championship. The Nuggets aren't desperate to win anymore for the idea. They already did it. They've already accomplished what they've been chasing for a while. But you have a team like Minnesota who's been trying to get to the mountaintop and has failed to do so. You got to make power moves when you're in that position. Nuggets, you have a luxury that teams wish they had. You have to take advantage of that.